Chapter 600. The tens of thousands of people and martial artists in the square were still talking about it. The 5 eliminated geniuses could only dejectedly leave and walk down the high platform. Then, the imperial tutor announced loudly, "The 5 participants who passed the second round of assessment, please rest and recuperate as soon as possible. Tomorrow morning, the imperial court will hold the third round of assessment here. The 5 of you will fight in the arena. This is the last round of the assessment. 4 people will be eliminated, and the final winner will become the Tianqian region lord." When the imperial preceptor's voice fell, many people burst into excited cheers. Ji Tianqing, Chen Zhenwu, and the others also looked expectant and confident. After the imperial tutor announced the news, he left the square with Long Yunxiao and returned to the imperial court at the top of the mountain. The tens of thousands of people and martial artists in the square were still waiting. No one was willing to leave. Everyone knew that tomorrow would be the most exciting day. The 5 geniuses would fight in public to determine the winner. Who would become the Tianqian region lord would be revealed tomorrow. Ji Tianqing, Chen Zhenwu, and the others left the stage. They immediately took the time to recuperate. Ji Tianqing had just returned to Yun Yao and Ji Ku when he was surrounded by them. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and Yan all congratulated him excitedly and expressed the excitement in their hearts. Even Kuan Wu and Ling Yichen came over and greeted Ji Tianqing and congratulated him. Ji Tianqing chatted with the crowd for a while, then left the square and found a mountain nearby. He found a cave in the mountain and set up a simple array. Then, he sat on a millstone and began to cultivate. Chen Zhenwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the others were seriously injured and had used up a lot of energy. They would not be able to recover in a short day. However, he was only slightly injured. With the powerful self-healing ability of the Kenshin bloodline, he could recover without the need to cultivate. He cultivated for 4 hours. His cultivation and physical strength had completely recovered. His strength had returned to its peak state. Then, he began to study the third eye on his forehead, the Thunder Spirit Eye. Even though he knew that this lightning spiritual eye was a reward set up by the imperial court, there shouldn't be any problems. However, he had yet to use the Thunder Spirit pupil after obtaining it, so he had to study it carefully before he could use it freely. Chen Zhenwu, Duanmu Yulong, and Yu Zhengfei are all very strong. Especially Chen Zhenwu, who is 4 levels higher than me. It's almost impossible for me to defeat him. The power of the lightning spirit eyes is also very strong. If I can use it properly, I will definitely be able to greatly increase my battle prowess. Perhaps, I will have a chance to defeat my opponent. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing tried to control the Thunderbolt Spirit Eyes on his forehead. The Thunder Spirit Eyes had already fused with his body and became a part of him, so of course he could control it smoothly. After several attempts, he finally managed to hide the Lightning Spirit Eyes. His forehead returned to normal, and no one could see any abnormalities. With just a thought, the Thunder Spirit Pupil would appear. When he did not need to use it, he could hide the Spirit Pupil. This is pretty good. If I can't hide the spirit pupil, it will feel weird to go out with 3 eyes. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself as he tried to control the lightning energy in the spirit pupil. After studying it for an hour, he realized that there was not much lightning energy in the spirit pupil. It could only release a lightning beam. The most amazing thing about the lightning spirit pupil was that it could communicate with the lightning energy in the world and gather it in the spirit pupil to condense it into a lightning beam. After Ji Tianqing understood the lightning spirit pupil, he tried to activate the lightning energy. He released a blue lightning beam and blasted it toward the cave wall. Suddenly, a lightning beam as thick as a water bucket shot out and blasted the dark brown cave wall. Kaboom! Amidst a deafening explosion, the cave collapsed. The entire mountain shook violently, and countless wide gullies appeared on the ground. The interior of the mountain was filled with blue lightning and electric arcs, burning the collapsed dust and rocks into black scorched earth. Ji Tianqing had already flown out of the cave and was standing in the sky above the mountain. Looking at the crumbling mountain peak below, he couldn't help but frown as he thought to himself, the power of the Thunderbolt Spiritual Eyes is indeed extraordinary. However, the lightning energy stored in the spirit pupil was used up in one shot. Moreover, the power of this lightning beam is much weaker than the one released by the mighty miracle god. It seems that the power of the lightning released by the spirit pupil is related to my cultivation. When I reach the 9th level of the Sky Origin Realm, I will be as strong as the mighty miracle god and be able to destroy a mountain with a lightning beam. Ji Tianqing knew what to do and returned to the mountain peak. He activated the power of the lightning spirit pupil to absorb the lightning energy in the world and store it in the spirit pupil. In a short 6 hours, all the lightning energy within 100 miles had been absorbed by him. Only then did he end his cultivation. The spirit pupil could only store so much lightning energy. Once he released the lightning beam, the lightning energy would be used up in one shot. Therefore, he could only use the lightning spirit pupil as his trump card at the critical moment. For the rest of the night, he cultivated on the mountain peak and improved his strength silently. A new day came after the night had passed. When the sun rose, Ji Tianqing left the mountain peak and returned to the square at the foot of the sky-reaching peak. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others were cheering for him and praying for him to win today. After all, the winner of the Sky Star Territory Lord would be decided in the arena today. After a while, Qian Shan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, Yu Zhengfei, and Di Jianqing arrived at the square one after another. Qian Shan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and Yu Zhengfei's injuries were light. After a day of recuperation, they seemed to be fine. Di Jianqing's injuries were the most serious. Even after a day of recuperation, he had only recovered 20 to 30%. He was still riddled with injuries and looked weak. He only had 40 to 50% of his combat strength at his peak. The people in the square observed Ji Tianqing, Di Jianqing, and the others and began to whisper to each other. We will see the results today. I wonder who will become the Sky Star Territory Lord. I'm really looking forward to it. In my opinion, Qian Shan Jinwu is the most powerful among the 5. He has the best chance of becoming the Sky Star Territory Lord. After all, Duanmu Yulong is the emperor's son of an aristocratic family. He must have many trump cards. He has a high chance of winning. It's a pity that the arena competition will test one's true strength. Even though Ji Tianqing's performance was outstanding, I'm afraid he will be eliminated today. Ji Tianqing's strength is 4 to 5 realms lower than Qian Shan Jinwu and Duanmu Yulong. He will never win. Chapter 601. While the crowd was discussing, 2 streaks of light flew down from the mountain peak. Whoosh! Whoosh! The 2 streaks of light landed on the high platform, revealing 2 figures. They were the Imperial Tutor and the Son of Heaven, Long Yunshao. The crowd quieted down and stared at the Imperial Tutor on the stage. The Imperial Tutor glanced at the crowd and saw that Ji Tianqing, Qian Shan Jinwu, and the other contestants were all present. He announced loudly, there are 5 contestants in today's competition. I will use the method of drawing lots to pick out 2 participants at a time. They will fight in the arena in front of everyone. The winner will advance and the loser will be eliminated. The Imperial Tutor announced the rules of the competition. He waved his hand and 5 streaks of golden light floated in the sky. There was a token in each of the streaks of golden light, which corresponded to the names of the 5 contestants. The Imperial Tutor waved his hand, and the 5 streaks of golden light danced in the air, messing up the order of the tokens. Son of Heaven, please draw lots for the 5 contestants. Long Yunshao did not hesitate. He stretched out his hands and took out 2 streaks of golden light and handed them to the Imperial Tutor. The Imperial Tutor opened the golden light and took out the tokens inside. He announced loudly, the first round, Ji Tianqing versus Di Jianqing. The crowd began to discuss after hearing the result. Di Jianqing's face was solemn and worried. But when he heard that his opponent was Ji Tianqing, he relaxed a lot. He turned his head and glanced at Ji Tianqing. A cold smile flashed in his eyes as he thought to himself, with my current condition, I will definitely lose. There is no way I can defeat Qian Shan Jinwu and Duanmu Yulong. However, if I defeat Ji Tianqing first and then lose to those 2 guys, it won't be too bad. Qian Shan Jinwu and Duanmu Yulong obviously had the same idea. They both revealed a playful look. However, Ji Tianqing's expression didn't change at all. At this time, Long Yunshao took 2 more golden lights from the sky and handed them to the Imperial Tutor. The Imperial Tutor opened the golden light and took out 2 tokens. He announced loudly, the second round, Qian Shan Jinwu versus Yu Zhengfei. In this round, Duanmu Yulong will not need to fight and will directly advance to the next round. As he finished talking, people started to talk about whether Yu Zhengfei could defeat Qian Shan Jinwu, who was at the 7th level of Sky Origin stage. Qian Shan Jinwu and Yu Zhengfei looked at each other. Yu Zhengfei's eyes were gloomy and solemn, as if he was facing a great enemy. Qianshan Zhenwu's eyes were full of confidence, with a hint of a smile. And the person who was in the best mood was naturally Duanmu Yulong. That was because he was lucky enough to get a bye. He didn't need to fight at all to advance. In this way, not only could he conserve his energy and hide his trump card, he could also take the opportunity to heal his injuries and restore his power. After the Imperial Preceptor announced the results of the drawing of lots, he activated the defensive formation on the high platform, using a huge dark yellow light shield to protect the entire high platform. This defensive array was extremely powerful. It was impossible for a Sky Origin stage cultivator to destroy it. The aftermath of the battle wouldn't spread out, so it wouldn't hurt the people in the square. I announced the start of the first round. As the Imperial Tutor finished talking, Di Jianqing stepped onto the stage first. Swoosh! He flashed and flew onto the stage with his ancient sword on his back. He crossed his arms and looked confident and powerful. He looked down at Ji Tianqing, who was below the stage, with a mocking sneer on his face. Apparently, he didn't take Ji Tianqing seriously at all. He thought he was going to win for sure. Many people thought the same. They all believed that Ji Tianqing would be defeated by Di Jianqing. The crowd started to talk again. Ji Tianqing's silhouette flashed and flew into the ring, standing 50 meters away from Di Jianqing. His expression was indifferent as he stood on the stage, his gaze calm as he looked at Di Jianqing. Di Jianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a sneer, "Ji Tianqing, I didn't expect you and I would be opponents. I don't know whether you are unlucky or I am lucky enough." Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly. "Di Jianqing, if you are smart enough, you should beg for mercy from me now. I don't want to beat you too badly. I don't want you to lose face." Hearing this, Di Jianqing's expression changed drastically. He opened his eyes with anger and coldness. "Ji Tianqing, you are too arrogant. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Those fools in Giant Holy City just called you a savior a few times. Do you really think that you're a savior? I think you are still living in a dream. You are only at Sky Origin stage. How can you defeat me? You will lose for sure." Ji Tianqing was not angry or angry. Instead, he looked at him with pity. He shook his head and sighed. "Disaster is coming, but you don't know it. You still want to show off in front of everyone. You really make me feel sorry for you." The people under the stage were all shocked. They looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. They exclaimed in disgust. Nobody expected Ji Tianqing to be so confident when facing Di Jianqing, who was only at Sky Origin stage 5th level. Di Jianqing was so angry that his face turned green. His chest was filled with anger. His body was filled with a strong desire to fight. "Ji Tianqing, no matter how eloquent you are, it is useless. I will show you the marvelous sword art of the sword faction in the Green Crane Valley. I will let you know that even if I am severely injured, I can still defeat you easily." While talking, Di Jianqing made a sword spell with both hands and performed a secret sword art. The Cloud Scar ancient sword on his back flew up to the sky. It shone with 5 colors and turned into a huge 5-colored sword that was 10 meters long. One sword to startle the heavens. Di Jianqing suddenly let out a low roar and controlled the huge 5-colored sword to descend from the sky towards Ji Tianqing. The power of this sword was fierce and domineering. It was as if it could split the sky and the earth. The thousands of people around the stage opened their eyes wide. They stared at the huge 5-colored sword with anticipation. Everyone wanted to see if Ji Tianqing, who was so confident, could block Di Jianqing's marvelous sword technique. Ji Tianqing was still calm and unruffled. He looked at Di Jianqing with an expressionless face and said, "Your so-called marvelous sword art is nothing but a joke in front of me. You're just asking to be humiliated." As he spoke, a black sword appeared in his left hand. It was the Black Dragon's sword. He held the sword hilt with his right hand and pulled it out instantly. He unleashed a powerful aura and slashed at the huge 5-colored sword in the sky. Dragon soars from the 9 heavens. When the Black Dragon sword was unsheathed, a loud dragon roar burst out. It echoed for dozens of miles. A 30-meter-long frost divine dragon suddenly appeared. It extended its claws and fangs. It unleashed a destructive aura and clashed with Di Jianqing's Cloud Scar ancient sword. Boom! The frost divine dragon and the huge 5-colored sword collided. A deafening sound was heard. At that moment, the entire square was shaking, and the sound waves stirred up layers of ripples in the sky. Chapter 602. The five-color giant sword was destroyed, and the cloud scar ancient sword was also blown away. It crashed into the yellow light barrier at the edge of the platform. The light barrier formed by the defensive formation was very strong. It was not damaged at all, and the cloud scar ancient sword fell to the ground. Di Jianqing's expression changed. His eyes were filled with shock. He couldn't believe that with Ji Tianqing's strength and cultivation base, he could execute such a magnificent and shocking sword strike. He had always been proud of his wondrous swordsmanship, but at this moment, when compared to Ji Tianqing, he was completely inferior and appeared ordinary. Before Di Jianqing could react, Ji Tianqing had already performed the second sword skill. Metal Slash. He held the black dragon sword with both hands and activated all of his power. He slashed out a giant golden sword that was 40 meters long. The giant golden sword, carrying an incomparably sharp and fierce aura, slashed down from the sky with a force that could split the heavens and earth apart, slashing towards Di Jianqing with a loud bang. At that moment, the giant golden sword was as bright as the sun. It lit up the entire square. This was the first time Ji Tianqing had performed the 5 secret skills of Tianqing. Its power was far more powerful than the 5 sword skills of the Flying Star Sword technique. Di Jianqing's aura was locked down by the giant golden sword. He had nowhere to run. His eyes were filled with shock. Ji Tianqing's strength has reached such a level? How can he perform such a terrifying sword skill? The cloud scar ancient sword had already been blown away. At this critical moment, he could only use the remaining true yuan in his body to form a dark yellow true yuan shield. He also took out a black ink slab. This heaven origin spiritual treasure was used to block the power of the metal slash. After he injected true yuan into the black ink slab, it immediately expanded to a radius of 5 meters. It blocked the top of his head. Almost at the same time, the metal emperor slash, with the power to destroy everything, struck the ancient inkstone with a loud bang. Boom! Crack! Amidst the deafening noise, there was a clear cracking sound. That simple and unadorned pitch-black inkstone was split into 2 on the spot and flew out in 2 different directions. The metal slash only paused for a moment. Its power was weakened by about 30%. It hit Di Jianqing and drowned him. Boom! The metal slash hit the ground, creating a 100-meter-long trench on the green stone floor. Dust and gravel flew everywhere. Di Jianqing was smashed into the huge trench. He was lying in the rubble with blood all over his body. He had already passed out. Countless pieces of rubble buried him, causing him to end up in an even more miserable state. The platform was almost cut in half by the sword. The entire square was shaking violently. Fortunately, the high platform was built with the hardest lapis lazuli, and a powerful defensive array was set up, so it did not collapse on the spot. Otherwise, the metal slash. After a while, the golden light finally disappeared. Ji Tianqing put away the black dragon sword. He stood on the platform calmly. He had a carefree look on his face, as if the sword strike that destroyed the heavens and earth was just a casual move. Everyone was stunned. They looked at him in disbelief. It took them a long time to come back to their senses. No one could believe that Ji Tianqing, who was at Sky Origin Stage Level 3, defeated Di Jianqing, who was at Sky Origin Stage Level 5, with only 2 moves. Di Jianqing was the prime disciple of the sword faction. He was a true master of the sword. How could he lose so miserably? After the tens of thousands of citizens regained their senses, they immediately erupted into earth-shattering shouts and discussions. Many commoners and martial artists looked at Ji Tianqing with eyes full of shock and admiration. Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and Yu Zhengfei were also stunned. Their faces turned pale. The 3 of them thought that even though Di Jianqing was severely injured, he could still defeat Ji Tianqing. After all, there was a difference of 2 to 3 levels between Sky Origin Stage cultivators. They were not ordinary Sky Origin Stage cultivators. They were all famous talents in the Central Plains. Under such circumstances, Ji Tianqing could never defeat Di Jianqing. However, he did it. And he did it so easily. He crushed Di Jianqing in an overbearing and invincible manner. Qianshan Jinwu and Duanmu Yulong sensed the danger. They stopped underestimating Ji Tianqing and decided to treat him with caution. After 100 breaths, the imperial tutor announced the result of the competition. Ji Tianqing wins the first round. Di Jianqing is eliminated. After he announced the result, several golden armor imperials jumped into the ditch. They dug out the unconscious Di Jianqing from the debris and carried him off the platform. Countless people saw Di Jianqing's miserable appearance. They all burst into laughter and discussions. Poor Di Jianqing. In the giant holy city, he was severely injured by the giant holy god and fainted. Now, under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, he was struck into the ground by Ji Tianqing's sword and fainted again. Today was definitely the most humiliating day in his life. He had lost all the face he could in his life. Then, the Imperial Preceptor used the power of the formation and quickly flattened the wide gully on the high platform. When the platform was restored, he announced loudly, "The second round is between Qianshan Zhenwu and Yu Zhengfei." Qianshan Zhenwu jumped onto the platform first. He held a golden heavy sword in his hand. His body was exuding a violent fighting spirit and an overbearing aura. Yu Zhengfei followed closely behind him. He flew onto the platform and stood facing Qianshan Zhenwu from 100 meters away. Qianshan Zhenwu silently activated the vital core in his body. He kept accumulating his aura and power. He looked at Yu Zhengfei and said confidently, "Brother Yu, please excuse me." Yu Zhengfei looked solemn and said in a low voice, "We are competing on the same platform. The winner is the king. What is there to be offended? Brother Qianshan, it is a great fortune to be able to fight with you. Today, I will do my best." Qianshan Zhenwu also nodded solemnly and said, "Very good. I will definitely not underestimate you. I will definitely bring out my true abilities and have a good fight with you." Four powerful cultivators, fighting with all their strength was a way to respect each other. Yu Zhengfei was wearing a dragon-patterned armor. He held the coiling dragon spear with both hands. His fighting spirit surged and condensed into dark red flames. "Brother Qianshan, take this." When Yu Zhengfei's true essence accumulated to its peak, he let out a low roar and took the initiative to attack. 10 Ultimate Berserker Spear. He leaped into the air, reaching a height of 100 meters. Gripping the coiling dragon spear with both hands, he thrust out 10 huge dark red spear shadows with all his strength. Each spear shadow was 20 meters long. They were formed by terrifying flames and contained the power to destroy everything. The entire platform became incomparably hot, and even the air was distorted by the flames. 10 violent and overbearing spear shadows fell from the sky and enveloped Qianshan Zhenwu's figure, leaving him nowhere to hide. However, Qianshan Zhenwu had no intention of dodging. He waved his heavy sword and slashed out 5 fire divine dragons to meet Yu Zhengfei head-on. Fire 5 Dragons Slash. Both of their cultivation techniques had a ferocious and domineering characteristic. What they used was the power of fire. Such a head-on clash between two powerful forces instantly caused the eyes of the commoners in the square to widen. Their hearts were also in their throats. Bang, bang, bang. The 5 fire divine dragons flew into the sky and collided with the 10 dark red spears. There was a deafening sound. Chapter 603. The earth-shattering noise and the fire that filled the entire platform didn't disappear until a long time later. When the flames in the sky dissipated, everyone saw that Yu Zhengfei and Qianshan Zhenwu were fighting fiercely in the arena. Qianshan Zhenwu wasn't hurt at all. He looked normal and his qi was still violent. There was a wound on Yu Zhengfei's chest. There was blood on the corner of his mouth. Apparently, he was slightly injured in the fight. However, he was an experienced warrior. Such a small injury wouldn't affect his combat effectiveness. It would only make him more violent. He dashed forward, wielding the coiling dragon spear with all of his strength. He continuously performed one destructive spear skill after another. Qianshan Zhenwu was also doing his best. He wielded his golden sword and fought against Yu Zhengfei. He kept slashing out sword lights that could break the world. The fight soon reached the most intense level. Both of them burst out their strongest power and used their most powerful secret skills. The spear shadows and the sword lights kept hitting each other, making loud noises. The area within 10,000 meters was shaking. The high platform made of lapis lazuli was soon ravaged by the two of them. It was full of holes and looked like a scene of devastation. Such an intense battle naturally dazzled the eyes of the tens of thousands of citizens, who all cheered loudly for how wonderful it was. Everyone stared at the arena without blinking. Their hearts clenched tightly as they secretly worried for the two of them. Finally, 15 minutes passed. Yu Zhengfei and Qianshan Jinwu had made 200 moves. They had used up most of their vital energy. Finally, the winner was decided. There was no suspense in the result. Qianshan Jinwu, who was at the 7th level of Sky Origin stage, was indeed powerful. He defeated Yu Zhengfei. However, Yu Zhengfei was only at the 5th level of Sky Origin stage, but he lost to Qianshan Jinwu after over 100 moves. Qianshan Jinwu was also badly injured. He was covered in blood. It was unbelievable. Even though Yu Zhengfei lost, he was still honorable. He won the admiration of countless people and cultivators. Unfortunately, Yu Zhengfei's power was almost completely depleted, and his injuries were too severe. His dragon-patterned armor was stained with blood. He held his dragon spear with both hands. He stood on the ruined platform, bending over and gasping for breath. "Brother Qianshan, you are amazing. I admire you. I accept my defeat wholeheartedly," Yu Zhengfei said in a hoarse voice. Then he turned around and walked down the platform. He staggered out of the square. Qianshan Jinwu put away his golden sword and wiped the blood off his mouth. He turned around and looked at the imperial tutor. Tens of thousands of people were still talking about the exciting fight. They were excited. The emperor's preceptor walked onto the stage and announced loudly, "In the second round, Qianshan Jinwu wins and Yu Zhengfei loses. Third round, Ji Tianxing will fight Duanmu Yulong." After the announcement, Qianshan Jinwu bowed to the imperial tutor and left the platform. The imperial tutor used an array to repair the broken platform. Then, he announced the start of the third round. Duanmu Yulong, who had been watching from below the platform, couldn't wait to get on the platform. "The chance is finally here. As long as I kill Ji Tianxing on the platform, I can complete the Great Lord's order and become his right-hand man. Ji Tianxing, you will die today." Duanmu Yulong sneered in his heart. A cold killing intent flashed in his eyes. He held a silver sword in his left hand and pointed at Ji Tianxing with his right hand. He sneered and hooked his finger. This action was very arrogant and confident. Duanmu Yulong seemed to have victory in his hands. He didn't put Ji Tianxing in his eyes at all. The tens of thousands of people and cultivators around the square were in an uproar. They were all talking about it. Duanmu Yulong is so confident? Isn't he too arrogant? Maybe Duanmu Yulong thinks that he is 3 or 4 levels higher than Ji Tianxing. So, he is sure that Ji Tianxing can't defeat him? But in the previous battle, Ji Tianxing defeated Di Jianqing, who was in the 5th level of Sky Origin stage, with just 2 moves. Duanmu Yulong and Ji Tianxing are both princes of the Imperial Palace. Even if they are fighting on the platform, they should be learning from each other. Why do I feel like they have a grudge? Based on their performance in Giant Holy City, I hope that Ji Tianxing can win. Sigh, it's hard to say who will win. Although Duanmu Yulong is arrogant, Ji Tianxing doesn't have much chance of winning. Amidst the discussions of countless people, Ji Tianxing calmly went up to the ring. Although Duanmu Yulong was provoking him with his eyes and gestures, he wasn't angered at all. He was as calm as ever. After he stood still on the stage, Duanmu Yulong sneered and said, "Ji Tianxing, swords and sabers have no eyes on the stage. I'm afraid I won't be able to hold back and kill you with one strike. If you know what's good for you, quickly admit defeat and surrender." Ji Tianxing stared coldly at Duanmu Yulong. He thought to himself, "I have a close relationship with Yun Yao. It's normal for the Duanmu and Murong families to be hostile towards me. However, Murong Lingfeng tried to rope me in with ill intentions. Duanmu Yulong didn't hide his hostility towards me. In the eyes of others, what he said was a deliberate provocation to provoke me. However, it's obvious that he wants to kill me. He wants to take advantage of this battle to kill me." Duanmu Yulong hid his killing intent very well. However, Ji Tianxing had the thunder spirit eyes. The spirit eyes seemed to have an even more magical effect. He could see through Duanmu Yulong's disguise and feel the killing intent in his heart. "Damn bastard! I have no enmity with you, yet you want to kill me." Ji Tianxing was secretly furious. His whole body was burning with anger and his aura was rising steadily. However, Duanmu Yulong didn't know that Ji Tianxing had seen through his intentions. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was silent, he sneered contemptuously and said, "Hee hee, it seems that you won't shed tears until you see the coffin. You're angry because of this? Since you don't know the difference between life and death, don't blame me for being ruthless." As his voice fell, Duanmu Yulong could no longer hold back his killing intent. He waved his sword and attacked like lightning. Myriad sword white dragon cry. Duanmu Yulong burst out with majestic true essence and instantly slashed out 69 blazing white sword lights. Each sword light was 30 meters long and contained an extremely sharp power. It instantly enveloped a radius of 100 meters and trapped Ji Tianqing. The 69 sword lights flew back and forth like lightning and condensed into a sword array to suppress Ji Tianqing. Duanmu Yulong pointed with his finger, and 9 white sword lights flew out from the sword array. They converged into a 50-meter-long white dragon and pounced on Ji Tianqing from the sky. Roar! The white dragon condensed from the sword lights was vivid and lifelike. It let out an earth-shaking dragon roar. In the blink of an eye, the terrifying white dragon was right in front of Ji Tianqing, about to swallow him whole. Chapter 604. When the sword array of the white dragon roar of 10,000 swords was formed and the holy white dragon pounced on Ji Tianqing, countless people were frightened and worried. The tens of thousands of people in the square all let out anxious cries of surprise, sweating for Ji Tianqing. At this critical juncture, Ji Tianqing could not avoid the holy white dragon's attack, so he did not hesitate to use the secret technique of Tianqing's 5 extremes. Earth Emperor Shield! He shouted in a low voice and circulated his true essence, frantically extracting the earth spiritual qi between heaven and earth. Suddenly, the earth spiritual qi within a 10-mile radius was gathered around him, condensing into an oval-shaped dark yellow light shield. Bam! Almost at the moment when the Earth Emperor shield was formed, the holy white dragon hit him hard. In the deafening loud noise, Ji Tianqing was sent flying 100 meters away, retreating to the edge of the ring. However, he was unscathed, and the Earth Emperor shield protecting him did not collapse. Only a dozen cracks appeared. Seeing this scene, the people in the square were relieved. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others were relieved. Duanmu Yulong's face froze, frowned, and his expression became gloomy. Damn bastard! How dare he block my white dragon roar? This sword array secret technique was one of his secret techniques. He had not used it in Giant Holy City before, saving it to kill Ji Tianqing. However, he did not expect Ji Tianqing to be so powerful that he could block the sword array's attack. However, when Duanmu Yulong saw the cracks on the Earth Emperor shield, he sneered and said, "Humph, you can block it once, but I'd like to see if you can block the second and third attack." As he said that, Duanmu Yulong controlled the sword array again, releasing 12 sword lights, which condensed into a holy white dragon. This holy white dragon was stronger than the previous one, and its speed was faster. However, before the holy white dragon could attack, Ji Tianqing used his secret technique to counterattack. Burning Sky Palm. He raised his magma-like left arm and fiercely slapped it towards Duanmu Yulong. Suddenly, the endless scarlet flame true fire condensed into a giant flame palm. It instantly passed through the sword formation's blockade and slapped towards Duanmu Yulong. At that moment, the gigantic flaming palm that blotted out the sky was as dazzling as the sun, illuminating the entire square. The high platform with a radius of 200 meters was also filled with the red flame true fire, turning into a boundless sea of fire. Duanmu Yulong did not expect that Ji Tianqing would not block Bai Longyin's bombardment and would even use his finishing move to launch a counterattack. When the heaven-burning giant palm struck, his pupils constricted, and his face was filled with shock. "Thousand Souls Cauldron!" He shouted in a low voice, and a dim light flashed in his palm. Immediately, a simple and unadorned bronze cauldron appeared. This ancient cauldron was his most prized treasure. It was used to refine elixirs. It was a heavenly origin grade treasure. Of course, other than refining pills, the ancient cauldron was also a magic treasure with both offensive and defensive capabilities. Swish! After the ancient cauldron was injected with true essence, it instantly turned into a 5-meter-tall bronze cauldron, protecting Duanmu Yulong. Almost at the same time, the burning sky palm that could destroy heaven and earth fell from the sky and slammed into Duanmu Yulong. Boom! A loud noise that shook the 9 heavens suddenly exploded on the high platform, shaking the ground within a radius of dozens of miles. The entire square violently shook, and the ground was shaken into dense gullies. Many martial artists and commoners were shaken to the ground. The arena with a radius of 200 meters had turned into a world of scarlet flames, and nothing could be seen clearly. The martial artists and commoners in the square could not see the situation in the arena, and they did not know the result. Everyone could only feel the destructive scarlet flame true fire through the defensive array, and how violent and terrifying its might was. After a long time, the scarlet flame true fire that filled the entire arena gradually dissipated. Tens of thousands of commoners and martial artists were finally able to see the situation in the arena. They saw that the indestructible arena had been smashed into pieces by the burning sky palm, turning into rubble and ruins. Ji Tianqing held the black dragon sword, proudly standing in the sky, unharmed. His white robe was spotless, and his golden wings were resplendent. His entire body exuded a domineering aura that looked down on the world, as if Kenshin was alive. And in the pile of rubble beneath his feet, there were dozens of charred copper cauldron fragments scattered. Duanmu Yulong's thousand souls cauldron was clearly shattered by the burning sky palm. At this time, there was a muffled bang as Duanmu Yulong drilled out of the rubble, sending countless rubble flying. He flapped his multicolored wings and flew into the sky, standing 200 meters away from Ji Tianqing. His eyes stared at Ji Tianqing, revealing a thick killing intent. There was no other way. Duanmu Yulong's appearance was too miserable, too embarrassing. His clothes had long been burned to ashes, leaving only a set of soft armor on his body. Moreover, it was full of cracks and charred black like charcoal. He was like a burnt sweet potato, his hair curled into a ball, his face was pitch black, and black smoke came out of his mouth. The commoners in the square were stunned when they saw Duanmu Yulong's appearance. Then, they burst into laughter and discussions. Of course, not only was Duanmu Yulong's appearance in a sorry state, his body was also seriously injured. Previously, he had been struck by lightning by Juling Shen, so his injuries had not healed. Now, he had suffered another burning sky palm, making his injuries even worse. Of course, his fighting strength had sharply decreased, leaving him with only 40% of his original strength. His angry face distorted as he roared with grief and indignation. Ji Tianqing! You bastard, I'll kill you! Duanmu Yulong was so angry that he almost went berserk, almost losing his reason. He no longer concealed the killing intent in his heart. As he roared, he held his sword with both hands. His entire body ignited with anger and blood-red killing intent. His eyes were red as he charged at Ji Tianqing. Blood transformation divine art. Duanmu Yulong resolutely used the secret technique of the Duanmu family. He burned his own blood essence and sacrificed 8 years of bitter cultivation in order to increase his fighting strength by 3 times for 10 breaths of time. At this moment, his fighting strength was several times stronger than Chen Shanzhenwu. In order to kill Ji Tianqing on the spot, he was willing to pay any price. World-destroying sword. With a furious roar, Duanmu Yulong held his sword with both hands and slashed out a 100-meter-long blood-red sword that could split the heavens and earth. This sword was enough to destroy everything within a 100-mile radius. It could split a city in half and turn it into ruins. When the blood-red sword fell from the sky, the air within a 10-mile radius seemed to have frozen. Tens of thousands of commoners stared in horror, their hearts in their throats. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, was fearless as he shouted coldly. He coldly shouted, Duanmu Yulong, since you're seeking death, I'll grant you death. As he spoke, he activated the sword embryo in his body, transforming it into a 30-meter-long golden sword. It flapped its golden wings and ruthlessly blasted at the berserk Duanmu Yulong. Sword of Judgment. Chapter 605. The Sword of Judgment with its golden wings didn't look as intimidating as the Sword of Bloody Light. But in fact, the two were almost the same. When the Sword of Judgment slashed through the sky and hit Duanmu Yulong, the Sword of Bloody Light also fell from the sky and hit Ji Tianqing hard. The two sword lights were terrifyingly powerful and could destroy the world. But the difference was that Duanmu Yulong didn't have any treasure to defend himself while Ji Tianqing closed his golden wings when the Sword of Bloody Light was about to hit him. Boom! Boom! The two of them were hit by the sword lights at the same time. Two loud noises that shook the sky sounded at the same time. At that moment, the world shook and the clouds changed color. The ground within a radius of tens of miles began to tremble as countless gullies appeared in the ground. Luckily, the imperial tutor saw that the situation wasn't good. He waved his hand and created a huge light shield to cover the entire square. That blocked the power from the arena and protected the tens of thousands of people in the square from being killed on the spot. After a long time, the loud noises that reverberated in the sky gradually disappeared. The 200 meters wide defensive array, the bloody light and the golden flame that filled the sky gradually disappeared. When everything returned to normal, everyone looked at the defensive array. Seeing the situation in the array, everyone was shocked. Countless people opened their mouths in astonishment. The square was deathly silent. Everyone had forgotten to shout and cheer. They saw that the arena had completely disappeared from the defensive array. Even the debris on the ground was gone. There was only a huge deep hole left in the array and dust flying in the air. Ji Tianqing and Duanmu Yulong were gone. There was no sound coming from the deep hole. The tens of thousands of people in the square came back to their senses and immediately burst into loud discussions and exclamations. Oh my God! Ji Tianqing and Duanmu Yulong's strength is actually so strong. This is unbelievable. If it weren't for the protection of the defensive array, I'm afraid everything within 100 miles would be in ruins. They are indeed the crown prince of the imperial residence. One of them is at Sky Origin Stage 3, and the other is at Sky Origin Stage 6. Yet, they can unleash the power of Sky Origin Stage 7. It's over. Ji Tianqing and Duanmu Yulong both disappeared. Could it be that the two of them perished together and turned into dust? In the crowd, Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and Yen looked at the deep pit in the great formation with pale faces. Their eyes were filled with deep sorrow. The three of them felt their hearts clench as the same thought flashed through their minds. No, Tianqing is definitely not dead. He must still be alive. Big brother Tianqing will never die, never. Senior brother Tianqing, you will always be the best. I don't believe that you will be killed. The three of them stared at the deep pit and silently prayed for Ji Tianqing, hoping that he would appear as soon as possible. Even the imperial tutor and Long Yunxiao frowned. They could not help but fly to the top of the crater to investigate the situation. At this moment, a dazzling golden light suddenly flew out from the deep pit. Swoosh! A handsome and valiant figure was wrapped in the golden light. He flew to the top of the deep pit and stood proudly in the air. When the crowd saw the figure clearly, they immediately exclaimed in disbelief. Ji Tianqing! It's Ji Tianqing! Oh my God! He's still alive! He's not dead! I simply can't believe my eyes. He took Duanmu Yulong's strongest killing move and actually survived. A genius? He's a monster. A once-in-a-century genius. This is so exciting. The emperor's son of the imperial family is indeed powerful. This is a battle between the most powerful geniuses. This battle will definitely spread throughout Zhongzhou and the 9 regions of the south. Tens of thousands of people were in an uproar. They were shouting excitedly and discussing excitedly. Ji Tianqing, who was standing in the air, was still in his white robe. He stood tall and straight, and his expression was the same as usual. However, he was not unscathed. Upon closer inspection, one could see that his face was as pale as paper. There was even a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. It was obvious that Duanmu Yulong's most powerful attack in his berserk state had injured him. However, his injuries were not serious and were not life-threatening. Ji Tianqing looked around and saw that the imperial tutor, Long Yunxiao, and countless martial artists were staring at the deep pit as if waiting for Duanmu Yulong to appear. Therefore, he said in a low voice, "Everyone, there's no need to wait. Duanmu Yulong has turned into dust. His soul has returned to heaven and earth." Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Their eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. Long Yunxiao's expression changed. He asked in a hoarse voice, You killed Duanmu Yulong?" His face was a little gloomy, and a look of deep worry flashed in his eyes. Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "Today was supposed to be a spar, but Duanmu Yulong wanted to kill me. He wanted to take my life, so how could I just sit there and wait for death? He only has himself to blame for dying under my sword. He can't blame anyone else." Just as he said, swords have no eyes on the stage. Since he didn't surrender, he was prepared to die. Ji Tianqing's words were reasonable. The tens of thousands of citizens nodded their heads in agreement. After all, this was a principle that applied to all corners of the world. Duanmu Yulong wanted to kill Ji Tianqing, but he was not strong enough. Instead, He was killed by Ji Tianxing. He deserved to die, and no one would sympathize with him. Long Yunxiao did not sympathize with Duanmu Yulong. In fact, he was happy to see Duanmu Yulong killed. However, what he was truly worried about was that Ji Tianxing had formed a blood feud with the Duanmu family. How would he survive in the central state in the future? No. If he offended the Duanmu family, not only would he not be able to survive in the central state, he would not even have a place in the entire Tianxian continent. However, at this point, it was useless for him to say anything. He could only sigh in his heart. Sigh. The imperial tutor flew to the sky above the array with a solemn face. He announced loudly, Ji Tianxing wins the third round. Now, only Ji Tianxing and Chen Shanzhenwu have advanced to the next round. Both of you, please recuperate and restore your strength as soon as possible. In 6 hours, the two of you will have the final battle to determine the winner. The imperial tutor spoke in a businesslike manner. He was sacred, majestic, and very fair. After announcing the result, he used the power of the array to repair the deep hole in the defensive array and rebuild the stage. Ji Tianxing also left the array silently and flew back to Yun Yao and the rest. Yao Yao Ku Yen protect me. I need to recuperate and restore my true core strength as soon as possible. He instructed in a low voice. Then, he immediately sat cross-legged on the ground and started to recuperate his internal injuries. In the previous battle, he had suffered serious injuries. He had used his trump card twice and used 60% of his power. Chapter 606. Ji Tianxing sat cross-legged on the ground, holding a piece of spirit stone in each hand. He was absorbing the spirit qi to heal himself. Yun Yao, Ji Ku and Yen sat in a circle around him, working together to help him recover quickly. Ling Yichen also rushed over to check on the situation and quickly worked to help Ji Tianxing. With everyone's help, Ji Tianxing only needed to circulate his energy and recuperate for 4 hours before his injuries were completely healed. There were 2 hours left. He tried his best to absorb the spirit qi to replenish his true essence and recover his power quickly. Unknowingly, it was already afternoon. 6 hours had passed and the final battle was about to begin. The imperial tutor had already rebuilt the arena and strengthened the defensive array. Tens of thousands of people were looking forward to the battle and they were getting more and more excited. Chen Shanzhenwu was the first to step onto the arena. He was full of confidence and had a well-thought-out plan. Ji Tianxing also finished his cultivation and stepped onto the arena under everyone's gaze. He stood 100 meters away from Chen Shanzhenwu. They looked at each other and a strong fighting spirit burst out from their bodies. Their momentum kept rising and their bodies were accumulating true essence. Chen Shanzhenwu said in a low voice, Ji Tianxing, I reached the 7th level of Sky Origin Stage 3 years ago, but you only reached the 3rd level of Sky Origin Stage 2 months ago. It was a miracle that you could defeat Duanmu Yulong in the battle. You will be famous in the world. Now your true essence has been used up and you are seriously injured. You've already lost this battle. Admit defeat. Chen Shanzhenwu's tone was very firm, as if he was stating a fact. Countless practitioners in the square didn't think he was arrogant and they all nodded in agreement. In the martial world, it was rare for a 3rd-level Sky Origin Stage practitioner to defeat a 4th-level Sky Origin Stage practitioner. Those who could defeat a 5th-level Sky Origin Stage practitioner were top geniuses. It was almost impossible to defeat a 6th-level Sky Origin Stage practitioner. Once it happened, it would be a miracle. It was impossible for him to defeat a cultivator at the 7th level of the Sky Origin Stage with a gap of 4 levels. There had never been such a case since ancient times. Moreover, Chen Shanzhenwu was not an ordinary Sky Origin Stage cultivator. He was a famous genius in the Central Plains. In everyone's opinion, Ji Tianxing would definitely lose today. He would definitely lose this battle. He had no chance of winning. However, Ji Tianxing stared at Chen Shanzhenwu and shook his head. Chen Shanzhenwu, we're 4 levels apart. I can't defeat you. This is common sense. But I've long made up my mind to become the domain lord of the heavenly stellar region. Since I've already come this far, how can I admit defeat? Even if I know it's impossible, I won't give up. Perhaps, I will create a second miracle today. Without fighting, who knows what the result will be? Ji Tianxing's tone was calm, but it contained an unwavering attitude, which made people feel deep respect for him. Even though Qianshan Zhenwu was his opponent, he couldn't help but nod and say seriously, "Very good. Ji Tianxing, even if you lose to me today, you are still worthy of my respect. After today, your name will shake the world. You will also be one of the top 10 peerless geniuses in the monarch mansion." Qianshan Zhenwu put away the last trace of contempt and arrogance in his heart. He held the golden heavy sword with both hands, and his whole body burst out with a monstrous fighting spirit. "Ji Tianxing, let's fight to our heart's content. 7 demon sealing swords." Qianshan Zhenwu roared with an imposing aura, and a majestic true core strength burst out. He waved his heavy sword and slashed out 7 sword radiances that could split heaven and earth. The 7 giant sword radiances formed by the 5-colored spiritual light were each 50 meters long. They were like giant swords that could split mountains and rivers. They flew above Ji Tianxing's head. The entire arena was filled with violent sword qi. The 5-colored brilliance illuminated the world, and it emitted an earth-shattering wave of true core strength. What was unexpected was that each of the 7 huge sword lights split into 7. In an instant, there were 49 sword lights. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 49 gigantic sword lights enveloped the entire arena. It was as if a gigantic sword array had descended from the heavens and slammed down. The power of the 7 demon sealing swords was so terrifying that it made countless people cry out in surprise. No one expected Qianshan Zhenwu to be so cautious against Ji Tianxing. He used such a powerful killing move as soon as he attacked. Ji Tianxing was enveloped by the sword array. There were huge sword radiances in all directions, and there was nowhere for him to hide. In the face of Qianshan Zhenwu's powerful attack, he could only use his ultimate skill to counterattack. Burning Sky Palm. Ji Tianxing shouted in a low voice. He raised his left palm with a cold expression and slapped out a huge flaming palm. Boom! The huge palm formed by the red flame primordial fire instantly shattered more than a dozen sword radiances. It carried the power to destroy heaven and earth and attacked Qianshan Zhenwu. The arena was only 200 meters wide, and the burning sky palm took up half of the space. How could Qianshan Zhenwu dodge it? Bang! In an instant, Qianshan Zhenwu did not have time to block it. He was hit by the burning sky palm, and his body was engulfed by the monstrous red flame. At the same time, more than 30 sword radiances engulfed Ji Tianxing's body and slammed into him. However, he was already prepared. When the sword radiances were about to pierce his head, he had already closed his golden wings. The entire arena was filled with flames, and it suddenly turned into a world of red flames. Nothing could be seen clearly. Rumble! An earth-shattering sound burst out and spread for hundreds of miles. It shook the mountains and the earth. The nearly 10,000 warriors in the square were dumbfounded as they watched this scene. Their faces were full of astonishment and horror. They just exchanged their first move, and it's already so intense? Oh my god! They didn't even try to launch a few attacks. Why are they so desperate? Isn't this too terrifying? Duanmu Yulong was severely injured by that flaming palm and was burned to a crisp. Ji Tianxing used his trump card in the first move. He is so decisive. Countless martial artists and commoners discussed excitedly, letting out waves of exclamations. Everyone stared at the arena that was like a sea of fire, waiting for the result. After a long time, the red flames that covered the sky gradually dissipated. Everyone could see the situation in the arena clearly. The ground of the arena that had been rebuilt and reinforced was now covered with spider-web-like cracks. More than a dozen holes had been blasted into the ground, and there was a huge, deep, charred pit. Ji Tianxing stood at the southern edge of the arena. His face was pale and he was panting. His eyes and expression were still calm. Qianshan Zhenwu stood on the other side. His robe had long been burned to black ashes, and his hair was charred and curly. He looked like he was in a sorry state. Not only that, his breathing was a little chaotic. He could not help but cough a few times. A puff of black smoke and red blood came out of his mouth. Obviously, Qianshan Zhenwu's internal organs had been injured by the burning sky palm. His combat strength had weakened a lot. He stared at Ji Tianxing. His eyes were surging with monstrous fighting spirit. He shouted in a hoarse voice, "Ji Tianxing, no wonder Duanmu Yulong died under your sword. You are really a monster." Chapter 607. Although Chen Shanzhenwu was injured by the burning sky palm after exchanging a blow with Ji Tianqing, he was still confident. Moreover, he stimulated his potential even more and erupted with his peak combat strength. Heaven and Earth Furnace. Chen Shanzhenwu roared and waved his heavy sword without hesitation, slashing out 9 sword auras in all directions. The 9 sword auras were dozens of meters long and contained the power to split the heavens and earth. They were extremely violent. However, none of the 9 sword lights were aimed at Ji Tianqing's front, back, left, and right. The people in the square were puzzled when they saw this scene. They did not understand what Chen Shanzhenwu was trying to do. In the next instant, a shocking scene appeared. The 9 sword auras seemed to casually slash the arena and the sky, bursting out a dazzling dark red brilliance. However, the earth-shattering dark red light enveloped the entire arena, turning it into a huge and towering furnace. There were boundless flames in the furnace. They rose fiercely and rolled as if they had the power to burn the sky and boil the sea. Chen Shanzhenwu stood in the sky above the furnace, exuding a violent domineering aura. He shouted in a deep voice, "Heaven and Earth Furnace, I am the master. Ji Tianqing, your life is in my hands." As he spoke, Chen Shanzhenwu suddenly raised his left hand. A shocking hurricane immediately swept up in the furnace, carrying flames that could burn everything and swept toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was in the dark red furnace. He was like a piece of charcoal that was about to be ignited, burned, and finally turned into ashes. The situation was just as Chen Shanzhenwu said. The entire arena had turned into a huge furnace. It was like Chen Shanzhenwu's domain, and everything was under his control. If Ji Tianqing could not escape the suppression of the furnace, he would definitely be burned to ashes. Fortunately, he had already mastered the 5 elements and had the power of the red flame true fire. No matter how powerful the heaven and earth furnace was, it could not do anything to him for a while. In this dangerous situation, Ji Tianqing was still calm and composed. He circulated his energy to resist the bombardment of the furnace's flames while thinking of a way to break out. Chen Shanzhenwu's heaven and earth cauldron not only borrows the power of fire, but also utilizes the Tao of array formations and the wondrous Tao of sword. In addition, his heavy sword has also disappeared. It must have merged with the heaven and earth furnace to provide power for this secret technique. In just a few breaths of time, Ji Tianqing had analyzed the structure and attributes of the heaven and earth furnace. He was just about to observe the essence of the heaven and earth furnace, the foundation of the formation, and the structure of the veined patterns in order to find a way to break it. After all, his attainments in array Tao were extraordinary. Even the average divine prime cultivator was inferior to him. However, Chen Shanzhenwu would not give him a chance. He immediately waved his hands and made a seal, launching a powerful attack. Heavenly wind as a saber, earthly fire as a sword. Saber and sword slay the body. Furnace to melt the soul. After Chen Shanzhenwu formed the Dharma seal, he continuously waved his palms and injected his majestic true essence into the heaven and earth furnace. Instantly, a violent gust of wind blew in the furnace, and the raging flames condensed into thousands of flaming swords, shooting towards Ji Tianqing like a rain of arrows. With the help of the wind, the power of the thousands upon thousands of flaming sword lights immediately increased to the limit, becoming incomparably violent. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Thousands upon thousands of flaming sword lights instantly drowned Ji Tianqing's figure and bombarded him fiercely. Bang, bang, bang. A deafening explosion erupted, causing the ground within a radius of dozens of miles to shake violently. Everyone opened their eyes wide, staring at the flaming sword lights in the furnace, looking for Ji Tianqing's figure. In their eyes, Ji Tianqing was killed by the thousands upon thousands of flaming sword lights. The sword lights were so powerful that even a 1,000-meter-tall mountain would be turned into dust in an instant. Ji Tianqing would be severely injured if not killed by such a fierce attack. Sigh. It seems that Ji Tianqing is still slightly inferior. Well, Chen Shanzhenwu is too powerful. Although he is only at Sky Origin Stage LV7, he is as powerful as an ordinary Sky Origin Stage LV8 cultivator. What an exciting and intense battle! I didn't expect Chen Shanzhenwu to have mastered such a marvelous secret skill. Ji Tianqing is doomed to lose. He will definitely lose today. It would be fine if he was only injured and defeated. I am afraid that he will be killed by the thousands of swords. It is such a pity for such a peerless genius to die like this. While countless people were discussing, the thousands upon thousands of sword lights in the furnace finally dissipated. Ji Tianxing's figure appeared again. He was in perfect condition, and it seemed like he was fine. After all, when the thousands upon thousands of sword lights bombarded him, he used the golden rock wings in time to protect himself with the golden wings. However, using the golden wings to protect himself consumed a large amount of true core power. His face was pale, and he was panting heavily. His martial arts were fading quickly. His originally spotless white robe was now charred black. Countless holes had been burned into it, making him look somewhat miserable. Chen Shanzhenwu was stunned. He couldn't believe it. He blocked my thousands upon thousands of sword lights? How is that possible? After being stunned for a moment, Chen Shanzhenwu's eyes fell on Ji Tianxing's golden wings. He immediately realized the problem. So it was that treasure that saved him. Back in Giant Spiritual City, he used his wings to block the lightning attack of the mighty miracle god. No matter how powerful my ultimate skill is, it can't be compared to the lightning pillar of the mighty miracle god. Could it be that I can't do anything to Ji Tianxing? Chen Shanzhenwu frowned, and his eyes became a little gloomy. At this moment, Ji Tianxing circulated his martial arts for a moment. His true core power was restored smoothly, and his face returned to normal. He immediately unleashed his secret technique and shot out a black pillar of water that soared into the sky, blasting towards the edge of the heaven and earth furnace. Black water rope. The surging black water pillar was hundreds of meters tall and as thick as a house. It was like a huge black dragon. This was the first time Ji Tianxing used the black water rope in a battle after mastering it. Although the black water rope was not violent enough, he believed that water could suppress fire. The black water rope would definitely be able to suppress the heaven and earth furnace. Bang! The dragon-like black water rope fiercely hit the barrier of the heaven and earth furnace, and a dull sound rang out. A large hole appeared in the wall of light formed by the dark red flames, and dozens of cracks appeared. However, the heaven and earth furnace's barrier was too thick, and its defensive power was very strong. The black water rope could not penetrate it. Ji Tianxing's eyes flashed, and he shouted in a low voice, "It's really effective. Then let's do it again and completely break through the heaven and earth furnace." Under his control, the dragon-like black water rope flew back, circled twice in the air, and fiercely hit the heaven and earth furnace's barrier. Bang! This time, the heaven and earth furnace's barrier was finally broken through, and a huge hole appeared. The dark red flames immediately leaked out, and the entire heaven and earth furnace shook violently. Seeing this, Chen Shanzhenwu's face turned gloomy, and a resolute cold light flashed in his eyes. Chapter 608. Chen Shanzhenwu saw that Ji Tianxing had mastered the water secret skill, which could restrain the power of the furnace of heaven and earth. Therefore, he didn't repair the hole in the furnace of heaven and earth. Instead, he used a horrifying move that was similar to self-explosion. Furnace C, heaven and earth collapse. Chen Shanzhenwu shouted in a low voice. He waved his hands and made a seal. The furnace of heaven and earth with a radius of 200 meters exploded completely. Boom! At that instant, the furnace collapsed and was obliterated, and it erupted with might capable of obliterating the heavens and the earth. It erupted with boundless blazing flames that completely filled the entire arena. Nothing could be seen on the arena except for the dark red fire. The loud sound that shook the sky spread over a radius of 100 miles. It even shook the sky-reaching peak of the imperial court. Fortunately, the imperial tutor had strengthened the defense array and blocked the power of the furnace of heaven and earth. Otherwise, when the power that could destroy the heavens and the earth erupted, the boundless flames would spread out and burn everything within a radius of 100 miles, turning it into scorched earth and ruins. The square shook violently. Countless civilians and martial artists were shaken. Some people couldn't stand still and fell to the ground. Even so, no one cared about their own safety. They stared at the arena that was like a sea of fire. It's over. Ji Tianxing is dead. Such a horrifying explosion. Even the heavens and earth will be destroyed, let alone flesh and blood. The furnace of heaven and earth has exploded. How can the charcoal in the furnace survive? Sigh. What a pity for a newly emerged peerless talent. A powerhouse at Sky Origin Stage 7 can actually use such a destructive secret skill. Is this really the power and skill of a martial artist? Yun Yao, Jiku Yener, and the others in the crowd all turned pale. Their eyes were fixed on the sea of fire, and their hearts were filled with worry. They believed that Ji Tianqing was invincible. Even if he fought against Qianshan Zhenwu, who was at Sky Origin Stage 7, he wouldn't lose. However, they also knew that it was only a fantasy. It would never happen. No matter how outstanding Ji Tianqing was, he was still a human, not a god. In their eyes, Ji Tianqing being able to kill Duanmu Yulong and fight Qianshan Zhenwu to this extent was already a world-shaking miracle. At this moment, they no longer hoped that Ji Tianqing could win. As long as Ji Tianqing could live safely, that was enough. Finally, the sea of fire that filled the entire arena gradually dissipated. The arena regained its clarity, and everyone could see the situation clearly. He saw that the entire arena had already collapsed, turning into scorched earth and shattered rocks that were still emitting spirals of black smoke. Qianshan Zhenwu was standing in the sky, while Ji Tianqing was standing on top of the rubble. He was hunched over and gasping for breath. The white robe he wore had already turned to ashes and completely disappeared. He was only left with a set of soft armor, but it was also full of holes and pitch black. The brilliance of the golden wings was very dim. Dark red blood flowed down from the corner of his mouth and fell on the scorched earth and ruins. The dark red shattered rocks still contained a terrifying heat. They evaporated his blood and turned it into 5 colored light spots that spread out. Obviously, Ji Tianqing had blocked the power of the heaven and earth furnace's self-explosion. He was not killed on the spot, but he was seriously injured. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. Tens of thousands of people and martial artists burst into an incredulous exclamation. They were so excited that they danced and spoke incoherently. "Oh my God! This is a miracle! Ji Tianqing endured such a destructive attack and still survived? If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I would never believe it." Even if Ji Tianqing is defeated today, he has created a miracle. Although he has lost, it is still a glorious defeat. This is too scary. With Ji Tianqing's performance, even in the Emperor Mansion, he must be a top genius. In the sky, the Imperial Tutor and Long Yunxiao were also in disbelief. The Imperial Tutor's eyes were shining. He thought to himself, Ji Tianqing is indeed the successor of Kenshin. In the future, he will definitely become the second Kenshin. Unfortunately, he has not had enough time to grow. If he was given another month or two, he might really be able to create a miracle and defeat Qianshan Zhenwu. Long Yunxiao's mood was very complicated. He muttered to himself, Ji Tianqing, oh Ji Tianqing, you are really a fearsome and respectful opponent. I am the #1 genius of the human race, but I have long been defeated by you. If it were not for Yao Yao, I would really like to be friends with you. At this moment, Qianshan Zhenwu also came to his senses. He shouted with a serious face. Ji Tianqing, you should be proud of yourself for being able to block my ultimate killing move. At this point, you are already an arrow at the end of its flight. How can you fight with me? For hundreds of years, there has never been a genius like you in our race. I don't want to kill you. Just admit defeat. Qianshan Zhenwu was very clear that he could defeat Ji Tianqing because he had been practicing martial arts for more than 40 years. Ji Tianqing was only an 18-year-old young man, who had only been practicing martial arts for 1/3 of his time. If Ji Tianqing was given another year, he would definitely not be a match for Ji Tianqing. However, Ji Tianqing slowly raised his head and looked at him with clear eyes. He said in a low and firm voice, "No, I will never admit defeat. Qianshan Zhenwu, you are indeed very strong. You are the strongest opponent I have ever met in my life. However, I have not fallen yet, so you have not won." As soon as he finished speaking, he activated the remaining 60% of his power and performed his ultimate killer move. Sword of Judgment. The sword embryo in his body flew out and instantly turned into a 30-meter-long holy sword with dazzling golden light. The holy sword was surrounded by golden flames as if it had a pair of wings. It exploded with unstoppable power and charged toward Qianshan Zhenwu. Qianshan Zhenwu's expression changed immediately. Apparently, he did not expect that Ji Tianqing, who was at the end of its flight, could still perform such a powerful killer move. At this critical moment, he held the heavy sword tightly with both hands and unleashed his majestic true core strength to form a sword light barrier in front of him. In the next moment, the Sword of Judgment hit the sword light barrier hard, bursting out a thunderous sound. Boom! Crack! Golden light burst out and covered the sky. It was as if there was a golden sun in the sky, which dazzled the entire square. Qianshan Zhenwu was immediately sent flying backward and crashed into the light barrier of the defensive array. Boom! He was bounced back by the light barrier and fell from the sky. He spat out a mouthful of blood. After injuring Qianshan Zhenwu, the Sword of Judgment quickly shrank back into the sword embryo and flew back into Ji Tianqing's body. At the same time, Ji Tianqing opened the third eye on his forehead and stared at Qianshan Zhenwu, who was falling from the sky. Thunderbolt! Ji Tianqing shouted in a low voice and released all the thunderbolt power in his spiritual eye. The extremely violent thunderbolt condensed into a blue light beam that was more than 10 meters long and as thick as a bucket. It slashed toward Qianshan Zhenwu. Kaboom! Chapter 609. The destructive lightning beam hit Qianshan Zhenwu. The azure lightning completely enveloped his figure. Once again, he was sent flying backwards and crashed heavily into the light wall of the formation, causing a muffled bang. Then he fell from the sky into the ruins. He rolled a few times before he stopped. His body was burnt black. He was so twisted that he didn't look like a human being anymore. Blue lightning surrounded him. There were hundreds of wounds all over his body. Blood gushed out from the wounds and dyed the ruins red. Qianshan Zhenwu, who was so powerful a moment ago, was severely injured by Ji Tianqing's 2 moves. It was too horrible to look at. This scene made everyone in the square dumbfounded. They had all seen it. Countless civilians and martial practitioners let out cries of disbelief and discussion. Even Kuan Wu, Fox Princess, and Tai Yi of the Water Clan, who were watching the battle silently, were shocked. Wasn't Ji Tianqing severely injured? How can he still use such a horrifying skill? He is about to lose, but he can still fight back. Is he going to turn the tables and defeat Qianshan Zhenwu? After today, the situation in King's Mansion will change again. Ji Tianqing has only been in King's Mansion for 2 months, and he is already so powerful. Ji Tianqing tried his best to straighten his body and stand on the scorched earth. His face was pale, and he was sweating. Blood kept pouring out from his wounds. He looked miserable. After using the Sword of Judgment, he had used up 30% of his energy. He only had 30% left. At this point, his combat strength was also extremely weak, and he couldn't even suppress his injuries. He couldn't care about his injuries. He could only use the self-healing ability of Kenshin blood to recover slowly. Qianshan Zhenwu, who was lying in the ruins, struggled to get up. Qianshan Zhenwu's injuries were worse than Ji Tianqing's. His face was distorted beyond recognition. He didn't look like a human being at all. However, he was a level 7 Sky Origin Stage cultivator after all. He still had 40% of his power, and there was still powerful spiritual energy running inside his body. As he circulated his internal energy to suppress his injuries, he staggered across the ruins and walked towards Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing, even if you severely injured me, how much power do you have left? I've said it before, it's impossible for you to defeat me, and it's impossible for you to create miracles. Victory is mine, and the title of Tianshan Region Lord is mine. Qianshan Zhenwu roared in a low voice. He gripped his golden sword tightly again and slashed towards Ji Tianqing with an earth-shattering sword. Qianshan! Miejin! Qianshan Zhenwu unleashed the last 40% of his power and displayed the unique skill of the Qianshan family that had been passed down for centuries. This sword was 100 meters long and shone with dazzling 5-colored light. It truly had the power to destroy 100 miles of heaven and earth and annihilate 1,000 mountains. Although this wasn't his most beautiful move, it was his most powerful trump card. Qianshan Zhenwu didn't hesitate to use this sword to end the battle. Ji Tianqing didn't want to be outdone. He activated the last 30% of his power and performed a unique skill. Tianqing! 5 extremes! He waved his palms and made a mysterious seal. He communicated with the world with his spiritual mind and soul, and instantly controlled the power of heaven and earth within 100 miles. Within 100 miles, a hurricane was blowing in the sky. All the spiritual chi of the 5 elements gathered and rushed into the arena. All of a sudden, a giant sword that was also 100 meters long appeared in the sky and slashed towards Qianshan Zhenwu. Qianshan Zhenwu's unique skill was a unique skill passed down from his family. It was a powerful killing move that he released with all his power. Ji Tianqing's unique skill absorbed the power of heaven and earth within 100 miles and added 30% of his own power. The two heaven-splitting swords were equally powerful. Both of them had the power to destroy the world. Boom! Under everyone's gaze, the two giant swords collided with each other and made a loud noise that shook the sky. At that moment, the arena within a radius of 200 meters was completely filled with 5 colored flames. It became so dazzling that nothing could be seen. The ground within a few dozen miles shook violently. The people in the square were also shaken. The deafening noise reverberated in the sky for dozens of seconds before it gradually stopped. When the 5-colored light dissipated, everyone could see the situation in the arena clearly. Without a doubt, the arena had disappeared again. The scorched earth and ruins were gone. There was only a huge pit with a radius of 200 meters left. At the southern edge of the huge pit, Ji Tianqing leaned against the barrier of the array. Blood was flowing out of his body. He was completely covered in blood. He was severely injured. His vital essence had been exhausted. The sword embryo in his body had become dim. Without the support of his vital essence, the Kenshin battle robe had also been retracted into his body. He couldn't use it anymore. At this moment, he was truly at the end of his rope. He didn't have any battle strength left. At the northern edge of the huge pit, Chen Shanzhenwu sat on the ground. His back was against the barrier of the array. He was panting with his eyes closed. His golden sword had fallen into the huge pit, but he couldn't pick it up. It was difficult for him to even move his fingers. He had also exhausted all his strength. He didn't have any battle strength left. Any strong commoner youth would be able to beat him up. Of course, his injuries were even more severe. His entire body was a bloody mess. He looked like a piece of roasted meat. Ji Tianqing and Chen Shanzhenwu were both panting silently. Neither of them had the strength to speak. The tens of thousands of people and warriors in the square stared at this scene with their mouths agape. They were all shocked and surprised. The crowd was quiet for a moment. Then, they started discussing like a flash flood. How could this be? What kind of result is this? Who won? Does anyone understand? Can anyone explain? Ji Tianqing and Chen Shanzhenwu have both exhausted their strength. They are seriously injured. It's impossible to tell who won. Don't tell me. The two of them are tied? A draw? Ji Tianqing didn't lose. He tied with Chen Shanzhenwu, who was at Sky Origin Stage LV7. Isn't this too unbelievable? Miracle. This is a real miracle. Although it's a draw in my heart, the winner is Ji Tianqing. That's right. Ji Tianqing is younger than Chen Shanzhenwu by more than 30 years. He is 4 levels lower than Chen Shanzhenwu, but he tied with him. This is a victory. Not only were the people talking excitedly, but Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and Yen'er were also excited and relieved. They kept cheering for Ji Tianqing. Ling Yixiong, Kunwu, Fox Princess, Tai Yi, and the other princes were also shocked. They couldn't believe this result. High up in the sky, the imperial tutor and Long Yunxiao were also surprised. They showed complicated expressions. They exchanged glances and secretly discussed for a while. Then, the imperial tutor flew to the top of the arena and announced the result. The final battle is over. Everyone has seen the result. Ji Tianqing and Chen Shanzhenwu tied. Chapter 6:10. The result announced by the imperial tutor caused countless people to discuss. But in the eyes of the crowd, his decision was undoubtedly the best choice. Ji Tianqing and Chen Shanzhenwu were tied, so the emperor could only make a decision. After all, the 9 southern regions were all under the imperial court. Every region leader was an overlord, but they were also loyal generals of the imperial court. They had to follow the imperial court's deployment and orders. In the discussion of countless people, the imperial tutor waved his hand and removed the defensive formation. Then, he waved his sleeves and shot out 2 beams of greenwood light. The 2 beams of greenwood light entered the bodies of Ji Tianqing and Chen Shanzhenwu, immediately suppressing their injuries and restoring their vitality. Then, the imperial tutor used a formation to gather the power of heaven and earth and restore the square to its original state. After doing all this, he left the square with Ji Tianqing and Chen Shanzhenwu and flew to the imperial court at the top of the mountain. Long Yunxiao followed closely behind and rushed to the top of the mountain. After a while, the imperial tutor, Ji Tianqing, and Qian Shanjinwu arrived at the top of the mountain and entered the palace of heaven and earth. The two of them stood in the hall and waited. The imperial tutor went to the emperor's study to report the news. Not long after, the imperial tutor returned and said to the two of them in a dignified voice, "His Majesty the Emperor is in the study. The two of you can go and see him." Ji Tianqing and Qian Shanjinwu nodded and left the hall together. They rushed to the emperor's study. When the two of them entered the study, they saw that there was only the emperor sitting behind the desk in the simple and elegant study. The emperor was wearing a golden dragon robe and a purple gold dragon crown. His aura was dignified and sacred. His eyes contained a mysterious power that could see through the hearts of people. The two of them walked to the study and stood still. They bowed together and paid their respects. "Greetings, His Majesty the Emperor." The emperor looked at their miserable appearance and nodded slightly. He said in a dignified voice, "Rise." This emperor never thought that the battle between the two of you would end up like this. This is truly surprising. Especially Ji Tianqing. He is only at the 3rd level of Sky Origin stage, yet he has created such a miracle. What a miracle! The emperor actually praised Ji Tianqing to his face without hesitation. This was definitely a great honor. Qian Shanjinwu's expression changed slightly. His heart was filled with envy and jealousy. However, Ji Tianqing's expression remained calm and composed. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for your praise, Your Majesty. You're neither arrogant nor rash." "Very good." The emperor nodded slightly, revealing a satisfied look. When Qian Shanjinwu saw that the emperor admired and thought highly of Ji Tianqing, he immediately cursed in his heart. He already had a bad premonition. At this moment the emperor spoke again. "Both of you are geniuses of my clan. One of you is a peerless genius, while the other is a genius with extraordinary talent. No matter who was chosen to be the Tianqin region lord, he would be the best candidate. However, before I make a decision, I want to ask both of you why you want to be the Tianqin region lord regardless of your life and death." After that, the emperor added in a dignified tone, "Both of you must tell the truth. There can be no falsehood in your words." His eyes became deep and mysterious. He quietly emitted invisible divine soul power, which covered Ji Tianqing and Qian Shanjinwu. The emperor, who had cultivated the Dharma form of the primordial spirit and mastered the means of the gods, could see through people's hearts and souls at a glance. In front of him, Ji Tianqing and Qian Shanjinwu could not hide anything from him. It was impossible for them to lie. "Qian Shanjinwu, you go first." The emperor looked at Qian Shanjinwu with dignified eyes and said in a low voice. Qian Shanjinwu's expression suddenly became serious. He cupped his hands and said respectfully, "Your Majesty, I am the legitimate son of the Qian Shan family. Since I was young, I have shouldered the mission of revitalizing the family. During my time as the city lord of Yeni City, I did my best to govern the city and tried my best to show my talent. I wanted to be valued by the imperial court. If I can become the Tianqin region lord, I will not only become a noble overlord, but also revitalize the Qian Shan family and protect the territory of the imperial court. I will definitely be loyal to the imperial court and do my best." Qian Shanjinwu's words were from the bottom of his heart. They were his true thoughts. In front of the emperor, he did not dare to lie. After hearing this, the emperor's expression did not change at all. He was still dignified and solemn. He did not comment on this. He just nodded slightly and looked at Ji Tianqing with dignified eyes. He asked in a low voice, "Ji Tianqing, why are you fighting so hard for the position of the Tianqin region lord?" Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and bowed. His expression was normal as he said, "Reporting to Your Majesty, I do not yearn for the power and prestige of the region lord. I only wish to do my best to protect the stability and peace of the Tianqin region. In the Tianqin region, there is a small backward country called the Qingyun Kingdom. It is my hometown. My family and home are there. In the star ancient realm of the Tianqin region, there is also the Sky Pillar sect. That is my sect. My master, my seniors, and my friends are there. I want to become the Tianqin region lord. Only then can I protect the Tianqin region from the invasion of demons and disasters. Only then can I protect my family and home. I can protect my sect and friends." At this point, Ji Tianqing paused for a moment. He looked at the emperor with a determined gaze and said in a solemn tone, When the Sky Pillar sect suffered a great calamity and the Demon Emperor appeared, I was determined to fight the Demon Emperor with my sect's elders and fellow disciples. Because of this, I was able to defeat the Demon Emperor and protect the Sky Pillar sect and the Star Ancient Realm. Although I am an insignificant person in the mortal world, I will do my best to protect my family and friends. I will not hesitate to sacrifice my life for this. After listening to his words, the Emperor immediately showed a gratified smile and nodded solemnly. Good. Very good. The Imperial Court does not appoint anyone to be the Tianqian Region Lord for you to enjoy the prestige and power of a Region Lord. It is also not for you to revive your family and seek personal benefits for yourself. A Region Lord must protect the peace of the region and the people in the region. For this, you will not hesitate to sacrifice your life. This is the true mission of a Region Lord. The Emperor praised Ji Tianqing twice in a row. It was obvious that he approved of Ji Tianqing's idea. Qianshan Jinwu immediately understood the result. He was filled with disappointment and frustration, and his eyes dimmed. He lowered his head in silence and pondered over the words of Ji Tianqing and the Emperor. After a while, he raised his head and bowed to the Emperor. I will remember your Majesty's teachings and know what to do from now on. The Emperor nodded slightly and announced solemnly. I announce that from today onwards, the Imperial Court appoints Ji Tianqing as the Tianqian Region Lord. Ji Tianqing will hold the Region Lord's golden seal granted by the Imperial Court and lead the 10 countries and hundreds of sects in the Tianqian region. He has the power of life and death. After the Emperor announced the appointment of the Imperial Court, he ordered the Imperial Tutor to draft an Imperial Edict and announce it to the world and the 9 regions in the south. The battle for the Region Lord was settled. Ji Tianqing and Qianshan Jinwu bowed to the Emperor and were about to leave the study. Chapter 6:11. After Ji Tianqing left the study, the Imperial Tutor was already waiting for him outside the door. Territorial Lord Tianqing, please wait. The Imperial Tutor waved the horsetail whisk in his hand and stopped him with a kind smile. Ji Tianqing stopped and saluted with his hands folded. May I ask what orders the Imperial Tutor has for me? The Imperial Tutor stroked his beard and said slowly, Territorial Lord Tianqing, you are seriously injured now. Please go back and recuperate. In a month, please come to the Imperial Court again to receive the Territorial Lord's golden seal and the decree of appointment. Only then can you take up the position. During this time, the Imperial Court will also issue an Imperial decree to announce the news. In addition, the Imperial Court will build a Territorial Lord's mansion for you and form a garrison army. These trivial matters will be taken care of by the Imperial Court, but you will have to wait patiently for a while. Ji Tianqing understood that this was a normal process, so he saluted with his hands folded. I understand. Thank you, Imperial Tutor. The Imperial Tutor smiled and nodded. Then, he left the Palace of Heaven and Earth with him and rushed to the square at the foot of the mountain. When they arrived at the square at the foot of the mountain, Qianshan Jinwu had already left with a gloomy expression. Nearly 10,000 people in the square looked at Qianshan Jinwu's lonely figure as he left. They were all discussing enthusiastically. Many people guessed the result when they saw Qianshan Jinwu's expression and reaction. At this moment, when they saw the Imperial Tutor bring Ji Tianqing to the square, they were even more convinced of their guess. The Emperor's preceptor waved the horsetail whisk in his hand, signaling for everyone to stop talking. Then, he announced in a solemn tone, Everyone, the Emperor has made his decision. He has chosen the most suitable candidate for the position of Heavenly Stellar Region Lord. That's right. Just as everyone guessed and expected, Ji Tianqing will be the Territorial Lord of Tianqian from today onwards. Although many people had guessed the result, when they heard the Imperial Tutor announce the result personally, they were inexplicably excited and cheered and shouted. All of a sudden, the plaza was filled with thunderous cheers. Waves of cheers erupted like a mountain torrent. That's great! Ji Tianqing has indeed become the Heavenly Stellar Region Lord. That's what everyone wants. Ji Tianqing's performance was so perfect, and he's also a peerless genius that only appears once in 100 years. Who else can I choose but him? Although Qianshan Jinwu is also very strong, he is far from Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing is only 17 or 18, right? He became a domain lord at such a young age? Oh my God! He's definitely the youngest domain lord in history. An 18-year-old overlord. That's too scary. This is simply unprecedented. Countless commoners and warriors were cheering and discussing excitedly. Over the past few days, they had watched the entire process of the election and witnessed Ji Tianqing's various performances with their own eyes. They had long been conquered by Ji Tianqing's performance. Even those who had looked down on him, mocked him, and gloated at his misfortune were now proud and excited that he had become the domain lord. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and Yen Er, who were in the crowd, were extremely surprised and cheered without caring about their image. Yun Yao was still able to remain calm. Her beautiful face was filled with surprise and gratification. She whispered to herself, "Tianqing, you'll always be the most dazzling star in the night sky. In just 1 year, you've changed from the young master of the Ji family to the current heavenly stellar region lord. Thinking back on the past year, it's really like a dream." Ji Ku was so excited that tears flowed down her cheeks. She clenched her fists and waved them around. She said excitedly, "Brother Tianqing, you really did it. An 18-year-old domain lord. You've created another miracle." Yen Er's face was also red with excitement. She jumped up and down and shouted excitedly, dancing with Chen Yu. "Senior Tianqing, you're my idol. We're proud of you. The heavenly stellar region is proud of you." Chen Yu flapped her little wings proudly and flew in the air. She smiled and shouted, "La! Our old Ji has become the domain lord. The youngest domain lord in history. The most awesome genius. We can do whatever we want on the mainland in the future. If I don't like anyone, I'll send a group of guards to kill them. If any idiot dares to provoke old Ji again, I'll send a garrison army to kill him 10,000 times." After announcing the news, the imperial tutor and Long Yunshao led the imperial guards back to the imperial palace at the peak of the mountain. The citizens in the square were discussing excitedly for a long time and were unwilling to leave. Ji Tianqing had just returned to the crowd and was surrounded by Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others. The three of them were full of concern and asked about his injuries. Knowing that his injuries were not life-threatening, everyone began to express their joy and excitement excitedly. At this moment, Ling Yi Shui, Kuan Wu, and Fox Princess all rushed over to congratulate him. "Junior Tianqing, congratulations. I'm afraid I'll have to call you Tianqing Domain Lord the next time we meet, right?" Ling Yi Shui was more familiar with him, so he joked with him. Kuan Wu also smiled and cupped his hands. "Ji Tianqing, from today onwards, you're the most honorable person in the human race. Congratulations." Even Fox Princess came over to congratulate him. She smiled and said, "Prince Tianqing is indeed a peerless genius. You deserve to be the domain lord of the heavenly stellar region. Congratulations." Ji Tianqing smiled and returned the greeting. After exchanging a few words with the three of them, he turned around and left with Yun Yao and the others. Among the crowd in the square, there were a few princes of the human race, Tai of the Aqua tribe, and many other honorable people. These people were secretly paying attention to Ji Tianqing, but their thoughts were complicated. None of them came to get close to Ji Tianqing. Many of them knew that Ji Tianqing had killed Duanmu Yulong, so he had formed a blood feud with the Duanmu family. In the future, the Duanmu family would definitely seek revenge. Even though Ji Tianqing was a peerless genius and the new domain lord of the heavenly stellar region, he was still too young and had no foundation to speak of. Facing an ancient family like the Duanmu family, he could only be completely destroyed. Why would the princes of the human race show him kindness at this moment? 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and the others returned to the Yunlan residence in Liantian City. Ji Tianqing gave a few instructions to the others. Then, he entered the secret chamber in his residence and focused on healing his injuries. Ji Ku, Yen Er, and Chen Yu stayed in his residence, waiting for him to recover. Yun Yao was calm, wise, and meticulous. She was not blinded by surprise. She expected that Ji Tianqing would be in more danger in the future after killing Duanmu Yulong. So, she thought carefully for a long time. When she came up with some countermeasures, she summoned Yun Luo and gave him a few orders to make some arrangements and preparations. Then, she stayed in the Yunlan residence and strengthened the defense and vigilance of the residence to ensure that Ji Tianqing could safely cultivate and heal his injuries. In just a few days, all kinds of news about Ji Tianqing swept across the central plains like the wind. The news that Ji Tianqing had killed Duanmu Yulong and tied with Qian Shan Zhenwu, had become the domain lord of the heavenly stellar region, had become a household name. It had become a topic that everyone knew. Chapter 6:12. Unknowingly, a month had passed. In this month, the news of Ji Tianqing becoming the Tianqian region lord spread throughout the central continent. The imperial court's imperial edict was also issued to the 9 southern regions and was known by all the major forces and countries. In nearly a month, hundreds of millions of people were talking about this matter, and he had truly become a peerless genius known by everyone in the central continent. Early in the morning, Ji Tianqing finished his cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. Now that his cultivation had fully recovered, his injuries were almost healed. Yun Yao, Jiku Yan and the others had already been waiting outside for him to come out. When everyone saw that he was in high spirits and had an extraordinary bearing, they all smiled and the worry in their hearts completely dissipated. After Ji Tianqing greeted everyone, he said, "Today is the day I receive the Region Lord's golden seal, and I will leave for the imperial court later. At that time, the imperial court will arrange guards and honor for me, and I will return to the Tianqian region to take up my post." Ji Ku and Yan already knew about this and were mentally prepared. Ji Ku quickly said, "Brother Tianqing, I want to go back with you. We have been away from the Qingyun kingdom for a year, and it's time to go back and take a look." Yan also said, "Senior brother Tianqing, I also want to go back with you and see the situation of Master and Sky Pillar sect." Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a smile, "I already guessed that you would definitely go back with me." After saying that, he looked at Yun Yao and asked, "Yao Yao, what about you?" Yun Yao hesitated for a moment before shaking her head gently and said, "Although I also want to go back with you and see the situation of Sky Pillar sect, I still have some matters to deal with. But I still have things to deal with here, so I won't be going back with you. Tianqing, although there is the imperial court's honor and guards on the way, you must be careful. Half a month ago, I heard that after Duanmu Yulong died, the Duanmu family hated you to the bone. The Duanmu family head was furious and said that he will make you pay with your blood. I am worried that you will suffer the revenge of the Duanmu family when you leave the central continent." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a confident smile, "Yao Yao, don't worry. In the short term, the Duanmu family will not dare to take revenge on me. I killed Duanmu Yulong in the arena and everyone knows about it. If I go to the Tianqian region and I encounter an assassination on the way, there is no need to investigate. Everyone in the world will know that the murderer is Duanmu family. No matter how arrogant the Duanmu clan is, would they dare to assassinate the region lord appointed by the imperial court and openly oppose the imperial court?" It turned out that Ji Tianqing had considered this matter long ago, and he was well aware of the pros and cons involved. That was why he was fearless. Duanmu Yulong, Duanmu Yulong, Duanmu Yulong families Duanmu families Duanmu Yulongs. However, Duanmu Yulong is the most outstanding son of the Duanmu family and the future head of the family. I'm only worried that the Duanmu clan's patriarch would be unable to bear the pain of losing his son, and would take the risk out of desperation. Ji Tianqing nodded and said seriously, "Yes, I have to take precautions. I will be careful." Then, everyone waved goodbye to Yun Yao and left the Yunlan courtyard. They rushed to the imperial court. 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing brought Ji Ku and Yan to the heaven-connecting peak and climbed to the imperial court. The imperial tutor was already waiting for him outside the palace of heaven and earth. When he saw him, he led him to the emperor's study. The light was bright, and in the elegant study, there was a dazzling golden light. The air was filled with a calming sandalwood fragrance. The object that was emitting the golden light was placed on the emperor's table. It was a large, square, golden seal. The emperor was wearing a dragon robe and a golden crown. He sat behind the table and was reading the documents, jade slips, and memorials on the table. Ji Tianqing followed the imperial tutor into the study and bowed respectfully. "Greetings to the emperor." Only then did the emperor put down the document in his hand and looked at Ji Tianqing with a gentle face. After looking at him for a while and seeing that he had regained his spirit, the emperor nodded slightly and said, "Ji Tianqing, I now give you the Tianqian region lord's golden seal. You must carry this with you in the future." After that, the emperor stood up and handed the golden seal to Ji Tianqing solemnly. Ji Tianqing took the seal with both hands. He felt that the seal was as heavy as a mountain and contained a vast aura that could suppress heaven and earth and encompass all things. The most important thing was that the seal looked brand new. It seemed to have been cast not long ago. The imperial tutor saw him looking at the golden seal in confusion and explained with a smile. The imperial court did not set up the position of the Tianqian region lord before, so there is no Tianshan region lord's golden seal. This golden seal was cast by the emperor himself. It took him 10 days and a lot of effort. This seal is not only a token of your identity as the Tianshan region lord, but also an extraordinary soul-level magic treasure called the Seal of Mountains and Rivers. If you encounter an accident, this seal can help you block a fatal blow from a soul-refining realm expert. It can save you 3 times in total. You must use it appropriately. After hearing the imperial tutor's explanation, Ji Tianqing suddenly understood. I see. I didn't expect this Seal of Mountains and Rivers to be a soul-level magic treasure. Thank you very much, Emperor. This was the first time Ji Tianqing had come into contact with a soul-level magic treasure. The most powerful treasure he had come into contact with before was only a soul-level magic treasure. Although he did not know how powerful a soul-level magic treasure was. But this was a magic treasure cast by the Emperor himself. How could it be ordinary? The Emperor nodded and continued. Now, the imperial court's edict has been passed down. All the cities in Central State and the 9 regions in the south know about it. In the Tianshan region, the Domain Lord's mansion has been completed at the location you chose. The garrison troops have also set off and are rushing to the Tianshan region day and night. The guards of honor and the accompanying guards are waiting outside. You will set off today and go to the Tianshan region to take office. Ji Tianqing solemnly put away the Seal of Mountains and Rivers. After bowing to the emperor, he left the study. When he walked out of the Palace of Heaven and Earth, he saw a mighty guard of honor waiting for him in the square in front of the palace. There were about 200 people in the guard of honor. Among them, more than 150 were elite imperial guards who had reached the Origin Core realm. In the guard, there was a huge golden bird as big as a house. It was the spiritual beast golden-winged bird. On the back of the golden-winged bird, there was a magnificent royal carriage with a canopy covering the top. Thousands of jewels were strung together to form a bead curtain. It looked extremely luxurious. The other 40 or so people in the guard of honor were all young women. They were also beautiful and talented. In addition, there was a guard of 100 people, who were also loyal and brave imperial guards. Of course, after he took office, the guard of honor would return to the imperial court. The guard of 100 people would stay in the Domain Lord's mansion. They were his private imperial guards. The journey from the imperial court to the Tianshan region was long. It would take a month to travel by spiritual beast. Therefore, the guard of honor and the guard of 300 people had to ride hundreds of spiritual beast birds. Chapter 6:13. Ji Tianqing didn't waste any time and immediately boarded the royal carriage on the back of the golden-winged bird. Ji Ku, Yen and Chen Yu all sat with him in the spacious and luxurious royal carriage. More than 40 beauties held various musical instruments and played beautiful music. The guard of honor immediately set off. The guard of honor flew into the sky and majestically flew towards the south. More than 100 guards also rode on spirit birds and followed closely behind the guard of honor. Not long after, Ji Tianqing and the others left the imperial court and soared high in the sky. A middle-aged man with a resolute and dignified face rode on a 4-winged flying tiger alone, and followed closely to the right of the royal carriage. Ji Tianqing saw that the middle-aged man was wearing a brocade robe and had a dignified bearing. He didn't seem like an ordinary guard, so he asked for his identity. The middle-aged man cupped his hands and bowed to him, replying respectfully, "Reporting to the Domain Lord, your subordinate Zhang Chen is now your deputy and the commander of the guard team. From now on, if you have any orders, just give the order, and I will do my best to carry them out." Ji Tianqing sized up Zhang Chen a few times before nodding and saying a few words of encouragement. In the following month, the guard of honor flew at full speed and headed straight for the Tianshan region in the south. The journey was long and Ji Tianqing didn't waste any time. He meditated on the royal carriage and silently improved his strength. In the beginning, Ji Ku and Yen were still a little excited. They admired the scenery of the mountains and rivers along the way and talked from time to time. They were finally going to return to the Tianshan region. Their hearts were filled with anticipation, and they were still fantasizing about the scene after returning. But after a long time, the two felt bored and lost interest in admiring the scenery. They simply followed Ji Tianqing's example and meditated to cultivate. During the journey, everyone had a smooth journey and didn't encounter any danger. The situation was just as Ji Tianqing had expected. He had set out a mighty guard of honor and represented the dignity of the imperial court. Who would dare to attack him? After a month, Ji Tianxing and the others finally returned to the Tianshan region. At noon on this day, the majestic honor guard entered the ancient star realm. Jiang Chen took the initiative to ask Ji Tianxing for instructions. Domain Lord, should we go to the newly built Domain Lord Manor first or the Sky Pillar sect? News of the Territorial Lord's arrival had already reached the ancient star realm a few days ago. The sect masters of all the major sects have gathered at the Sky Pillar sect, waiting to welcome him. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment, then ordered Jiang Chen, "Then let's go directly to the Sky Pillar sect." Jiang Chen immediately passed down the order, and the entire team flew towards the Sky Pillar sect. After a few months of recuperation, the Sky Pillar sect had returned to its original state. 9 majestic mountain peaks formed the 9-dragon spiritual pulse, which was protected by a powerful mountain protection array. Every mountain peak was overflowing with greenery, and the heavens and the earth were filled with rich spiritual energy. Although it would take at least a few years for the Sky Pillar sect to truly recover its strength, the Sky Pillar sect would still need a few more years. However, with Chu Tianxing and Xiang Wuji in charge, the Sky Pillar sect was still the #1 sect in the ancient star realm, the leader of the 4 major sects. At this moment, in the square in front of the palace on the summit of the Crimson Firmament Peak, several experts and young talents were standing respectfully. Everyone looked at the sky in front of them, as if waiting for something. The leader was a middle-aged man with a head full of white hair. He was tall and sturdy, and his appearance was dignified. He was the sect master of the Sky Pillar sect, Chu Tianxing. Back then, he was injured by the Blood Demon King's reverse Bone Devil Blade. After a few months of recuperation, his injuries had completely healed, and his strength had also recovered. The white-haired old man standing beside him was Grand Elder Xiang Wuji. He wore a purple robe, and he looked dignified without being angry. Behind the two of them were 3 experts and 3 young talents. They were the sect masters and chief disciples of the 3 major sections. Sect Master Qi of the Pill Cauldron sect, Sect Master Yen of the Six Harmony sect, and Granny Xueqi of the Heart Moon sect stood side by side. The chief disciples of the 3 major sects stood behind the 3 sect masters. At this moment, Sect Master Qi frowned and said in a low voice, "Everyone, we've been standing here for half a day. Why hasn't the new Territorial Lord come yet? Do you think he won't come today?" Sect Master Yen said with a solemn expression, "Sect Master Qi, the new Territorial Lord has arrived. No matter what, we have to welcome him. Whether the Territorial Lord comes today or not, we have to wait here. We can't be negligent or disrespectful." Granny Xueqi frowned and thought for a moment. She looked at Chu Tianxing and asked tentatively, "Sect Master Chu, the Imperial Court's decree said that the new Territorial Lord is called Ji Tianxing. I've been wondering, is the new Territorial Lord Chu's personal disciple, or is it a coincidence that he has the same name?" Hearing Granny Xueyi's question, Feng Min, Wu Yu, and the chief disciple of the Pill Cauldron sect all listened attentively, waiting for Chu Tianxing's answer. Chu Tianxing said calmly, "I haven't received a letter from Tianxing, so I can't be sure if the new Territorial Lord is him." Sect Master Qi quickly shook his head and smiled. "Granny Xueyi, is there a need to guess? It must be a coincidence that he has the same name. Sect Master Chu's personal disciple, Ji Tianxing, has only left the sect for a few months. How could he become a Sky Origin Stage elite, defeat all the geniuses of the Middle State, and become the Territorial Lord of the Tianshan region? In the entire Tianxian continent, you can't find such a heaven-defying genius." Sect Master Yen also nodded in agreement and said seriously, "According to the news from the Middle State, the new Territorial Lord defeated a Sky Origin Stage 6 genius, and even tied with a Sky Origin Stage 7 expert. Although Sect Master Chu's personal disciple is a genius, he can't be so monstrous. He has only left the Tianshan region for a few months. It's already a miracle that he can break through to the first level of Sky Origin Stage. This new Territorial Lord most likely has the same name as Sect Master Chu's personal disciple. After all, there are hundreds of millions of people in our clan, and there are many people with the same name." Just as everyone was discussing in low voices, the sky in front of them suddenly lit up with colorful brilliance, and there was a burst of music. "He's here! The new Territorial Lord has arrived." The few sect masters immediately stopped discussing and looked at the sky in front of them respectfully with their eyes wide open. After a while, a majestic guard of honor galloped from the sky in the distance. The troop was huge, and there were 200 people in the Guard of Honor. All of them were riding on spiritual birds, and there were many fairy-like beauties playing music. On both sides of the Guard of Honor, there were hundreds of gods in silver armor. They were all experts with powerful auras. In the sacred and majestic troop, there was an extraordinary golden-winged bird. It carried a magnificent royal carriage, showing an incomparably noble aura. Seeing this scene, the few sect masters immediately recalled the scene of the emperor's arrival. The new territorial lord's god of honor and power was not inferior to the emperor of the imperial court. It made everyone feel a strong sense of respect. After a while, the guard of honor of the new territorial lord arrived above the crimson cloud peak and slowly landed on the square in front of the palace. Chu Tianxing immediately led everyone to bow and pay their respects to the luxurious royal carriage. "We welcome the arrival of the territorial lord." Everyone bowed, lowered their heads, and bowed their hands. Their postures were respectful, and they did not dare to look up at the scene in the royal carriage. In the royal carriage, a young man's voice sounded. It was calm and majestic. "Everyone, please rise." Following this voice, a handsome young man wearing a white robe walked out from the jade carriage and arrived at the square with majestic strides. Chu Tiansheng and the others raised their heads and looked at the new territorial lord who walked out of the jade carriage. When everyone saw the appearance of the territorial lord, they suddenly trembled and widened their eyes in disbelief. "Tianxing? It's really you." Chu Tianxing's face was full of surprise, and his eyes were filled with disbelief and surprise. The expressions of the three sect masters also became very interesting. They were all shocked and stunned. Chapter 6:14. Ji, Tianxing? It's you? You're the new region leader? How is that possible? Sect leader Qi and sect leader Yan were stunned for a long time before they came back to their senses and exclaimed in disbelief. Just now, everyone was still discussing. The two of them swore that the new region leader and Ji Tianxing had the same name. But now, a miracle had happened. The peerless genius who was famous in Central State and had crushed all the geniuses was really Chu Tianxing's direct disciple. He was the Ji Tianxing that they knew. How could they not be inexplicably shocked? Not only were the three sect leaders shocked, but the three chief disciples were also stunned. They could not believe their eyes. Especially Feng Min and Wu Yu, who were the most affected. The shock in their hearts could not be described with words. A few months ago, the two of them had fought side by side with Ji Tianxing and destroyed the Demon Clan stronghold. Now they were still the same. They were still the chief disciples of the Heart Moon sect and the Six Unity sect. Ji Tianxing had become the noble emperor, the peerless genius who was famous in Central State, and the overlord of Tianjin region. Back then, they were all geniuses of equal status. Now the difference between their status and Ji Tianxing's was like the difference between clouds and mud. Ji Tianxing's status was too noble, and his halo was too dazzling. They could only look up to him and worship him. Just as everyone was shocked and still in a daze, Ji Tianxing stepped in front of Chu Tianxing. He smiled and bowed to Chu Tianxing. He said respectfully, "Master, I'm back." Chu Tianxing quickly reached out to hold his arms. He shook his head and said, "Tianxing, you can't do this. Now that you're the region leader, how can you bow to your subordinate?" As the region leader, Ji Tianxing was in charge of every inch of land in Tianjin region. Everyone in the Tianjin region, no matter who they were, was his subordinate. However, Ji Tianxing shook his head and said seriously, "Master, although I am the territory lord of the Tianjin region, I am also your disciple. I cannot abandon the relationship between master and disciple." Hearing this, Chu Tianxing was filled with gratification and excitement. He felt that he could die without regrets having such a disciple in this life. The three sect leaders were filled with emotions. They were both envious and jealous of Chu Tianxing. Xiang Wuji stroked his beard and revealed a gratified and excited expression. He smiled and nodded. "Good. This is great. Tianxing, you're in a high position now, but you're neither arrogant nor rash. You still respect your master and Dao. You're simply a role model for all martial artists in the world." Ji Tianxing also cupped his hands in greeting and said with a smile, "Old master, this disciple has come to visit you." Xiang Wuji's expression changed. He took a few steps back and waved his hand. "Don't." This was unacceptable. You are the heavenly stellar region lord, but I am not your master. How can you bow to me? Wouldn't that be too much for this old man? Ji Tianqing and Chu Tianqing both smiled and looked at Xiang Wuji playfully. It was obvious that although Xiang Wuji spoke casually, when Ji Tianqing bowed to him, he was flattered and found it hard to accept. Then, Ji Ku and Yan Er walked to the side of the crowd and bowed to Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji. Everyone chatted with each other and they were all very excited. Master, this is not the place to talk. Let's go back to the towering sky palace and talk. Ji Tianqing chatted with everyone for a while. Then, he led the crowd through the square and into the towering sky palace. Chu Tianqing, Xiang Wuji, and Ji Ku quickly followed and entered the towering sky palace with smiles on their faces. As for the people from the three sects, they were completely ignored and left on the side. Although the three sect leaders were embarrassed, they did not dare to have any disrespectful thoughts and quickly followed into the palace. Ji Tianqing sat at the head of the table. Everyone sat on both sides of the palace and reported the situation to Ji Tianqing. Especially Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji. They were the most excited and surprised today. The two of them told Ji Tianqing about the recent situation of the Towering Sky Sect and the Star Ancient Realm in detail. After listening to the two of them, Ji Tianqing finally understood the situation in the Star Ancient Realm. He said bluntly in front of everyone, "The Demon Emperor has already escaped from the Tianqian region and is fleeing to the northern desert. The Monarch Mansion has been secretly investigating the Demon Emperor's whereabouts. Soon, when the Monarch Mansion finds the Demon Emperor's whereabouts, they will take action and completely eliminate the Demon Emperor. The situation in the Tianqian region has stabilized. The Towering Sky Sect also needs to develop quickly and recover as soon as possible. In the future, I will not stay in the Tianqian region. I will return to the central province to cultivate. At that time, the Tianqian region situation will still be managed by the Towering Sky Sect. Sect Leader Master will have to work hard." Ji Tianqing's words were to announce to everyone that the Tianqian region would still be managed by the Towering Sky Sect. He wanted to be a hands-off manager. He would only appear when something big happened in the Tianqian region. When the sect leaders of the three major sects heard this, they were surprised and jealous. However, they did not dare to raise any objections. Originally, Sect Leader Qi and Sect Leader Yan thought that the situation in the Star Ancient Realm had changed. They had a chance to compete with the Towering Sky Sect and even compete for the position of the #1 sect. However, now that Ji Tianqing had become the Tianqian region lord, they no longer had the slightest chance. After the disaster, not only would the Towering Sky Sect not weaken, but it would also glow with even more dazzling brilliance and become even more powerful. Next, Ji Tianqing gave a few more orders to everyone and had a private conversation with Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji for a while. 4 hours later, Ji Tianqing left the Towering Sky Sect with the honor guard and headed to the Domain Lord Mansion. When the Imperial Court built the Domain Lord Mansion, it was built in the place he chose according to his decision. The Domain Lord Mansion was in the Star Ancient Realm. It was located in a mountain range with abundant spiritual qi and was only 600 miles away from the Towering Sky Sect. The mountain range was named the Tianqing Mountain Range. It had a radius of 300 miles. The experts of the Imperial Court used formations to arrange the 300 miles of mountains and rivers into a huge formation, forming a super spirit vein. In the center of the spiritual vein was a mountain that was nearly 10,000 meters high. The Domain Lord Mansion was built on the peak of the mountain. When Ji Tianqing arrived at the Domain Lord Mansion, he was also shocked by the imposing aura of the mountain and the magnificent palace. Above the 10,000-meter-tall peak was a boundless sea of white clouds. In the sea of clouds stood a group of palaces with a radius of 20 miles. There were jade palaces, pavilions, terraces, and even magnificent palaces. The setting sun shone on the Domain Lord Mansion, causing golden clouds to appear in the sea of clouds. The entire Domain Lord Mansion was covered with a layer of sacred golden light. It was as ethereal and sacred as an immortal cave. The Imperial Court had built the Domain Lord Mansion for him. It was more magnificent and luxurious than his cave in the Imperial King Mansion. After Ji Tianqing entered the Domain Lord Mansion, he asked the honor guard and guards to leave to rest. He took Ji Ku and Qian Yu to wander around the mansion and enjoy the beautiful scenery. The Domain Lord Mansion was so big that it would not be crowded even if there were tens of thousands of people living in it. If they were to stroll around leisurely, it would take them at least a day. Such a rare residence that was like a heavenly palace would be his private mansion in the future. Chapter 6:15. The imperial court had already arranged everything in the domain chief's manner. Ji Tianqing did not need to worry about it anymore. He strolled around the mansion and only returned to the study at night. The guard commander, Jiang Chen, rushed to the study and reported the situation to him respectfully. "My lord, the 100,000 soldiers of the garrison army have arrived in the ancient Star Realm. They are stationed in the Tianfeng Plains and are waiting for your orders. In addition, everything in the domain chief's manor has been arranged properly. Currently, there were over 1,000 servants and odd job workers, 300 maids, and 200 guards in the mansion. The guards under my command are not included in this list. They will follow you and protect you from now on." Ji Tianqing listened to Jiang Chen's report and pondered for a moment. He then gave a series of instructions. He did not need to worry about the trivial matters of the domain chief's manor. Jiang Chen and the steward appointed by the imperial court would take care of it. With the prestige and defensive power of the domain chief's manor, no one would dare to invade. Moreover, there were dozens of Tianyuan formations inside and outside the domain chief's manor. It was also protected by a soul-grade formation. The domain chief's manor was definitely the safest place in the Tianqian domain. No one could sneak in unless they were attacked by a soul-refining expert. As for the 100,000 soldiers of the garrison army, they were all brave and skilled in battle. The army of a mortal kingdom could not be compared to them. Ji Tianqing divided the 100,000 soldiers into 5 legions. 4 of them were sent to guard the 4 borders of the Tianqian domain. The 5th legion was stationed in the ancient Star Realm. They were ready to respond at any time. The problem of how to support the 100,000 soldiers and the domain chief's manor was very simple. The 10 countries and hundreds of martial arts sects in the Tianqian domain had to pay a certain amount of taxes to the domain chief's manor every year. This was a shocking amount of wealth that was enough to support hundreds of thousands of people. In the next few days, Ji Tianqing stayed in the domain chief's manor to fulfill the duties of the domain chief and deal with a lot of official business. Although he had become an overlord at the age of 18, it was the first time he dealt with such an important matter. However, he was able to deal with any situation calmly analyze, and think wisely before finally making a decision. Moreover, the imperial court had already considered this problem. They had assigned 2 military counselors to help him come up with plans. In this way, he would be able to handle official business with ease. Unknowingly, 3 days had passed. On the morning of the 4th day, Jiang Chen came to report the situation to him. Reporting to the domain lord, the decree has been sent to the Royal Azure Kingdom. You can depart at any time. Ji Tianqing immediately ordered, "Pass down the order. We are to return to the Royal Azure Dynasty immediately. I've already left Clear Sky Kingdom for a full year. It's time for me to go back and visit my father." Jiang Chen cupped his fists and said sincerely, "When my lord returns to the Royal Azure Kingdom, the entire Royal Azure Kingdom will respectfully welcome your arrival. My lord, this is truly a return to your hometown in glory." Ji Tianqing smiled and led Jiang Chen out of the study, heading towards the square in the manor. In the square, the guards of honor and the guards had already finished their preparations. After Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku boarded the royal carriage, the entourage set off on their journey. They left the domain chief's manor and rushed towards the Qingyun Kingdom. A year ago, Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku had left the Green Cloud Imperial City and rushed to the Star Ancient Realm in a carriage. At that time, the 2 of them took nearly a month to enter the Sky Pillar sect in the Star Ancient Realm. Today, Ji Tianqing's guards of honor only took 12 hours to cross thousands of miles of mountains and rivers and arrived at the Royal Azure Dynasty. In the evening, the sun was setting. The guards of honor were about to enter the Royal Azure Dynasty Imperial City. Ji Tianqing sat in the royal carriage, looking down at the land in front of him. Looking at the ancient Imperial City, his heart was filled with many emotions. Thinking back to when he was in the Royal Azure Dynasty Imperial City, he was persecuted by Ling Yunfei and Ji Ling. He was reduced to a good-for-nothing young master, who was ridiculed by the people in the city. Fortunately, Kenshin's tomb appeared, allowing him to inherit Kenshin's lost skills and embark on a strange and unique path of swordsmanship. It allowed him to recover his strength and reclaim the qualification to enter the Sky Pillar sect. After he entered the Sky Pillar sect, he went through hundreds of hardships and tribulations before he finally stood out and became the emperor whose name shook the central state. Recalling the past, everything was still vivid in his mind. In this short span of a year, Ji Tianxing went from being a good-for-nothing young master who was humiliated in the past to being the overlord of the Sky Pillar region. Such a heaven-defying change was like a mudworm turning into a divine dragon. It was unreal when one recalled it. Under the setting sun, outside the majestic city gates of the Royal Azure Dynasty Imperial City, 300 armored and armed royal guards stood on both sides of the main road outside the city gates respectfully, showing a dignified and solemn aura. On the wide and straight Bluestone Avenue, the Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor led the civil and military officials to stand in silence, quietly waiting for their arrival. There were hundreds of people present, but no one dared to make a noise or even whisper. Everyone knew that the Honorable Territorial Lord would be arriving at the Royal Azure Dynasty Imperial City today. The Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor and the civil and military officials were puzzled. Why did the newly appointed Territorial Lord want to inspect the Royal Azure Dynasty Imperial City? Among the 10 countries in the Sky Pillar region, the Royal Azure Dynasty Imperial City was ranked at the bottom. There was nothing outstanding about it that was worthy of the Territorial Lord's personal inspection. Therefore, the Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor was a little nervous and thought to himself, could it be that the Territorial Lord has just taken office and urgently needs to establish his authority, so he wants to start with the Royal Azure Dynasty Imperial City? However, no matter how worried and anxious he was, after receiving the order, he had no choice but to go out of the city to welcome the Territorial Lord. Just as everyone was waiting anxiously, a colorful glow appeared in the sky in front of them, accompanied by waves of beautiful music. The Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor and the civil and military officials were immediately energized, revealing a look of anticipation and awe as they looked at the colorful glow in the sky. In the blink of an eye, a majestic guard of honor flew from the sky and slowly landed on the plains outside the city. The hundreds of people in the Guard of Honor all exuded a powerful and dignified aura. They were riding on spiritual birds that the officials had never seen before, appearing very mysterious and powerful. Even the more than 40 maidservants playing the musical instruments in the Guard of Honor were like fairies who had descended from the heavens in the eyes of the civil and military officials. As for the luxurious jade carriage on the back of the golden-winged bird, it was extremely dazzling, like the carriage of the gods. Not only were the civil and military officials and the royal guards filled with fear, even the Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor was extremely respectful towards the Territorial Lord in the royal carriage. Your subject welcomes the arrival of the Territorial Lord in person. When the Guard of Honor landed, the Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor immediately knelt on the ground and bowed respectfully. Behind him, the civil and military officials and the 300 royal guards also knelt in unison and kowtowed with a very sincere expression. However, the Territorial Lord in the royal carriage did not speak, nor did he show his face. The majestic Guard of Honor stepped onto the Bluestone Road and headed straight for the Imperial City gates. Chapter 6:16. The new Territorial Lord did not speak nor did he show his face. After arriving at the Royal Azure City, the Guard of Honor immediately entered the city. The Royal Azure Emperor and the civil and military officials felt uneasy and could only follow closely behind the Guard of Honor. Everyone prayed silently in their hearts that the Territorial Lord would not make things difficult for the Royal Azure Kingdom. After all, the Territorial Lord only needed to say one word to decide the fate of the Royal Azure Kingdom and the survival of the Royal Azure Kingdom. After the Guard of Honor entered the city, they went straight to the center of the city. The citizens of the city came out to greet the Emperor and knelt on both sides of the road. When the Guard of Honor passed by, the citizens hurriedly kowtowed in salute. The Royal Azure Emperor thought that the Guard of Honor was going to the palace, so he had already sent people back to the palace to greet the Emperor. However, when the Guard of Honor reached the city square, they turned and walked towards the south side of the city. The Royal Azure Emperor and the officials were dumbfounded. They did not understand what this meant and could not guess where the Territorial Lord was going. Helpless, the Royal Azure Emperor and the officials could only follow the Guard of Honor to the south side of the city. After a quarter of an hour, the Guard of Honor arrived at the gates of the G Mansion and stopped. The Royal Azure Emperor and the officials were stunned. They did not understand what the Territorial Lord was going to do. Why did he not go to the palace but came to the G Mansion? Could it be that the Territorial Lord was acquainted with the G family? Or was there some connection? Thinking of this, the Royal Azure Emperor was filled with doubt and anticipation. He stared at the royal carriage and the G Mansion's gates with wide eyes. When had the guards of the G Mansion ever seen such a sacred and majestic parade? Even if it was only the Royal Azure Emperor, the guards would still have to greet him in fear and trepidation. At this moment, The guard of honor stopped in front of the Ji mansion's gates. There were at least 300 of them, and their grandeur was extremely grand. Behind the guard of honor, the royal Azure Dynasty emperor and his court officials stood respectfully, as if they were servants following the emperor. What kind of awe-inspiring and majestic parade was this? The guards at the gates were stunned. When they regained their senses, they rushed into the Ji mansion and reported the news to the master. Not long after, the entire Ji mansion was alarmed. Everyone was inexplicably shocked, and in fear and trepidation, they hurried to the gate to greet the emperor. The juniors and maids of the Ji family were all kneeling on the square in front of the palace, waiting for the arrival of the big shot. The patriarch, Ji Chongkong, was still able to maintain his calm. He quickly led a few people in charge to the entrance. After arriving at the entrance, when Ji Chongkong and the others clearly saw the formation outside the door, their expressions changed drastically. At this moment, the royal Azure Dynasty emperor was afraid that the Ji family would neglect the territorial lord, so he quickly reminded them in a dignified voice, "Ji Chongkong, what are you waiting for? Quickly come and welcome the new region lord." Domain lord? Hearing these words, Ji Chongkong and the other leaders trembled in confusion and shock. They couldn't understand why the honorable domain lord would suddenly grace the Ji mansion with his presence. Several leaders hurriedly knelt on both sides of the door, lowering their heads in fear and trepidation, not daring to raise their heads to look at the domain lord's royal carriage. With their status, daring to raise their heads to look was a disrespect to the domain lord, a crime punishable by death. Only the patriarch, Ji Chongkong, remained standing. He quickly walked towards the guard of honor, with a respectful attitude, and was about to immediately bow. However, just as he was about to bow, a handsome and valiant young man in a white robe flew out from the imperial carriage. Swoosh! No one saw the white-robed young man's movements clearly. They only saw a flash of white light, and the white-robed young man covered a distance of 10 steps and landed in front of Ji Chongkong. "Father, please rise. How can I accept such a grand gesture?" The white-robed young man quickly reached out to hold Ji Chongkong's arms. His handsome face was filled with concern, and his voice contained a trace of excitement. Ji Chongkong was stunned. His eyes were fixed on the white-robed young man in front of him, and he was immediately dumbfounded. He couldn't believe that the legendary peerless genius, the Honorable Tianqian Region Lord, was actually his son, Ji Tianxing. No matter how calm and collected Ji Chongkong was, he couldn't regain his senses at this moment, and couldn't say a word. Not only Ji Chongkong, but everyone else was also stunned. They were so shocked that their mouths were agape, but they couldn't make a sound. Although there were hundreds of people outside the Ji mansion, it was so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. The leaders of the Ji family were stunned. The royal Azure Dynasty emperor was dumbfounded. All the civil and military officials were dumbstruck. Their minds went blank. No one could believe that the sacred and dignified region lord was actually the eldest son of the Ji family, Ji Tianxing. Although there were some officials who didn't know Ji Tianxing. But Ji Tianxing addressed Ji Chongkong as his father, and this was enough to prove his identity. At this moment, hundreds of people were collectively dumbfounded. Their minds were blank, and they had completely lost the ability to think and speak. In everyone's hearts, the eldest young master of the Ji family, Ji Tianxing, was once a good-for-nothing young master whose cultivation was crippled. Even if he had a fortuitous encounter and successfully entered the Sky Pillar sect, he was now just an ordinary cultivator with some talent. But this extraordinary white-robed young man in front of them was a world-renowned peerless genius, the incomparably honorable region lord of the Tianqian region, the overlord of the 10 nations. No one could connect that ordinary young master of the Ji family with this sacred and honorable region lord in front of them. This was simply like a legend, too exaggerated and outrageous. Everyone was stunned for a long time. Ji Chongkong was the first to regain his senses. His hands tightly held onto Ji Tianxing's arm, and his face flushed with excitement as his entire body trembled. Tianxing? You are actually the region lord of the Tianqian region? No matter how calm Ji Chongkong was, he was so excited that his blood was boiling, and he stuttered. It couldn't be helped, the shock and surprise this matter gave him was simply too great. Even now, he still felt like he was in a dream as he held onto Ji Tianxing's arm with both hands. It was very unreal. Ji Tianxing supported his father and nodded with a smile on his face. He bowed respectfully and said, "Father, I am unfilial. I have been away from home for a year before returning to visit you. In order to make up for my mistakes, I did not even go to the palace when I returned to the royal Azure dynasty. I came home to pay my respects to you first." Ji Chongkong was so emotional that tears streamed down his face. He could only nod heavily, unable to say another word. The royal Azure dynasty emperor and the civil and military officials finally regained their senses. Their hearts were filled with extreme shock. Suddenly, a few muffled thuds could be heard from the originally quiet procession. Some of the officials who had offended the Ji family or had grievances with them were scared half to death on the spot. Their bodies trembled like a sieve. A few people with weaker psychological endurance fainted on the spot. Their vision turned black and they fell to the ground, unconscious. After all, no matter how powerful these people were in the royal Azure dynasty, in front of the sacred region lord, they were like ants in the grass. The region lord only needed to say one word to turn them all into ashes. Even the royal Azure dynasty emperor did not dare to protect them. Chapter 6:17. Outside the gates of the Ji mansion, the atmosphere was very strange. The royal Azure emperor and the civil and military officials forcefully suppressed the shock and horror in their hearts. They gritted their teeth and dared not make a single sound. If they disturbed the conversation between the territorial lord and his father, they would be beheaded no matter how many heads they had. No one dared to question the territorial lord's authority. Even the royal Azure emperor did not dare to show the slightest disrespect. After all, the strongest person in the royal Azure kingdom, Ji Shenshao, was only at the Yuan Dan stage. On the other hand, the territorial lord's guards added up to a total of 300 people. All of them were Yuan Dan stage experts. Even a few maidservants who played the zither could kill all the civil and military officials present at the scene. Moreover, the territorial lord was a legendary divine realm expert. He even had 100,000 garrison troops under his command. In the face of the territorial lord, everyone was but an ant. Finally, Ji Tianqing exchanged a few words with his father. When Ji Chongkong had calmed down, he smiled and said, "Father, this is not the place to talk. Let's go home and talk." All right, let's go home." Ji Chongkong lifted his sleeve to wipe away the tears at the corner of his eyes. He smiled emotionally and pulled Ji Tianqing towards the gates of the Ji mansion. The father and son pair completely ignored the royal Azure emperor and the civil and military officials. They did not need to put anyone in their eyes. On the other hand, the royal Azure emperor and the officials did not dare to complain. When Ji Tianqing helped his father through the gates, Jiang Chen used his spiritual sense to communicate with Ji Tianqing. "My lord, there are so many people blocking the gates. I'm afraid it's a little inappropriate. What do you think?" Only then did Ji Tianqing stop in his tracks. He turned his head to look at the royal Azure dynasty emperor and the civil and military officials before he said nonchalantly, "All of you can return to the imperial palace and wait. I'll be there in 2 days." Hearing his words, the royal Azure emperor and the civil and military officials looked as if they had been pardoned from a great burden. Under the emperor's lead, the officials bowed and left. As for the territorial lord's guards, they followed Ji Tianqing into the Ji mansion in a single file. They remained in the square in front of the palace to await orders. On the left and right sides of the square, all the family members, children, servants, and guards of the Ji mansion were kneeling. When Ji Tianqing and Ji Chongkong walked side by side, everyone respectfully prostrated themselves on the ground and repeatedly kowtowed. It wasn't until the father and son left the square and returned to the conference hall that the crowd dared to raise their heads. Everyone in the Ji clan was dumbfounded. Many of them kneeled on the ground in a daze and even forgot to get up. No one could believe that the young master from a year ago had suddenly become the domain lord of the heavenly stellar region. The difference between the two identities was like the difference between a rock on the ground and the stars in the sky. Even the folklore passed down from generation to generation didn't have such an exaggerated and bizarre story. Ji Tianqing and his father sat at the head of the table in the Ji clan's main hall. Originally, Ji Tianqing wanted Ji Chongkong to sit at the head of the table while he sat at the lower end. But how could Ji Chongkong agree? He insisted on pulling Ji Tianqing to sit beside him so that he could feel at ease. After all, Ji Tianqing's status as the domain lord of the heavenly stellar region was so noble that it was frightening. The few leaders didn't dare to sit down. They all stood respectfully in the main hall and listened to the father and son talk. Ji Tianqing asked his father if there were any changes in the imperial city and the Ji clan in the year that he left. Ji Chongkong thought for a moment before replying in a low voice. The imperial city hasn't changed much. It's still the same as before. However, our Ji clan's foundation has been damaged. This year, we've been biding our time and recovering in a low-key manner. At first, the Ling clan wantonly attacked the Ji clan. But later, the clan master Ling Sihai mysteriously disappeared. Problems arose within the Ling clan. For the sake of fighting for power, there was internal strife. Now, the Ling clan is torn apart and no longer a threat. However, although the Ling clan stopped attacking the Ji clan, some other noble clans took the opportunity to invade the Ji clan's properties and suppress our power. Ji Tianqing didn't feel angry or worried. He chuckled and waved his hand. Father, you don't have to worry. The Ling clan and those who secretly attacked our Ji clan will be destroyed soon. As long as the emperor isn't a fool, he'll know what to do. If I'm not wrong, he must be issuing orders now to send out a large number of people to eliminate the Ling clan and those who attacked our Ji clan. Ji Chongkong was stunned for a moment before he smiled with relief and nodded. That's right. Tianqing, with your current status, you don't even need to issue orders. The emperor will take the initiative to help the Ji clan eliminate all enemies and threats. Haha, the emperor is worried that he'll be implicated by those noble clans and suffer your wrath. Ji Chongkong had never had things go as smoothly as they did at this moment. Before Ji Tianqing returned home, the Ji clan was still in a precarious situation. Danger lurked everywhere and there were many forces who coveted and spied on them. Today, the Ji clan didn't need to do anything and the emperor would eliminate all enemies for the Ji clan to win Ji Tianqing's favor and show his loyalty to Ji Tianqing. Never in his wildest dreams did Ji Chongkong imagine that he would be in such a situation today. At this moment, Ji Tianqing continued. Father, I've returned not only to visit you but also to bring you to the Domain Lord's manor. Moreover, I want to help you completely remove the hidden injuries in your body that have been hidden for a long time. Ji Chongkong frowned and said reluctantly, Tianqing, our Ji clan has developed for 100 years to achieve today's power and properties. It's a pity to give them up just like that. Ji Tianqing shook his head and smiled. Father, I'm now the Tianqin Domain Lord. The entire Tianqin domain is mine. The 10 major countries, 100 major sects and hundreds of millions of people are all my people. What's there to miss about the Ji clan's properties and power? Once you've moved into the Domain Lord's manor, you'll be able to live like an immortal. You'll be able to prolong your life and pursue a higher realm of martial arts. Why would you miss the worldly things? Ji Chongkong had poured half his life's effort into the Ji clan's development today. Of course, he was reluctant to give up all of a sudden. However, after listening to Ji Tianqing's persuasion, he pondered for a moment and nodded his head in agreement. Good. Tianqing, you're now the Tianqin Domain Lord. Although your status is unparalleled, you'll definitely be attacked and retaliated against by countless experts and forces. As your father, although I can't help you much, I can't drag you down. Only when I've moved into the Domain Lord's manor can you have no worries and continue to pursue a higher realm of martial arts. Indeed, if Ji Tianqing's enemies found out that his father was a commoner of the Qingyun kingdom, they would most likely capture his father and use him as a hostage. Ji Chongkong was calm and wise. Of course, he had thought of this, so he agreed without hesitation. This was because he knew that Ji Tianqing's future achievements would be even greater. He would not just be the Tianqin Domain Lord. Chapter 6:18. Although Ji Chongkong had decided to leave the Royal Azure Kingdom for the Domain Chief's manor, the Domain Chief's manor was huge. It would take him a few days to deal with the aftermath of the Ji family's business. Over the next few days, Ji Chongkong was busy preparing for his trip to the Domain Chief's manor. Ji Tianqing stayed at home for 2 days and received various reports from Jiang Chen. Just as he expected, the Royal Azure Kingdom's emperor issued the order as soon as possible. In just 2 days, the Ling family's remnants were completely annihilated. Those aristocratic families and forces that were against the Ji family were also annihilated by the Royal Azure Kingdom's emperor. In these 2 days, the news of the Domain Chief's arrival in the Royal Azure Kingdom spread throughout the Royal Azure Kingdom. The entire Royal Azure Kingdom's people knew that the Honorable Domain Chief was actually the young master of the Ji family, the trash that was once ridiculed by countless people. For a moment, The entire kingdom was shocked. Hundreds of millions of people were inexplicably shocked. It was as if they had heard a legend and were discussing it endlessly. There was no doubt that the new domain chief, Ji Tianqing, would be the topic of discussion for a long time to come. That night, in the Royal Azure Kingdom's palace, the Royal Azure Kingdom's emperor was sitting at the table in the imperial study, handling official business. On the table, there was an incense burner emitting spirals of smoke, a gemstone lamp and a thick stack of memorials. In the past few days, the Royal Azure Kingdom's emperor had put in a lot of effort to eradicate the remnants of the Ling family and those forces that were against the Ji family. After all, those forces that dared to go against the Ji family were all aristocratic families with high status in the Royal Azure Kingdom. He suddenly issued an order to avenge the Ji family and carry out a purge within the kingdom. Of course, this would hurt the foundation of the Royal Azure Kingdom and cause unrest within the kingdom for a period of time. However, the Royal Azure Kingdom's emperor could only do so. Otherwise, if the domain chief personally took revenge, the Royal Azure Kingdom would be in turmoil for more than a few days. Thinking of this, the Royal Azure Kingdom's emperor could not help but rub his brows. At this moment, a pretty girl dressed in palace attire pushed open the door and entered the imperial study. Xueqi greets father. The pretty girl was Xueqi. She walked to the table and bowed to the Royal Azure Kingdom's emperor. The Royal Azure Kingdom's emperor put down the memorials in his hand and smiled amiably. He nodded and said, "Xueqi, get up. It's already late at night. Why aren't you asleep yet? What business do you have with Imperial Father?" Xueqi hesitated for a moment before he gathered his courage and said, "Imperial Father, did you receive the letter I sent you 2 months ago?" That letter. The Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor frowned and the smile on his face faded. He was silent for a moment before he asked in a low voice, "Xueqi, you came to find father tonight to ask about your background, right?" Xueqi nodded and said solemnly, "Imperial Father, in Xueqi's heart, you will always be the father who loves me the most. But now that Xueqi has grown up, I want to know the truth. I hope father can tell Xueqi." Xueqi had gradually accepted his identity as a member of the Golden Raccoon tribe. However, she still needed to clarify with the Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor and thoroughly verify this matter before she could feel at ease. The Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor nodded slightly and looked at her calmly. He then said in a deep voice, "Xueqi, the matter you mentioned in the letter is indeed true. Although I don't understand how you found out about this matter, since you asked, I'll tell you. That year, Imperial Father and Noble Consort Ning went to Guangling Temple to burn incense and pray that the heavens would bless Noble Consort Ning so that she could bear a dragon's seed. When they left Guangling Temple, a huge koi fish suddenly appeared in the river at the foot of the mountain. The Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor recounted the incident from beginning to end. The whole process was exactly the same as what Xueqi knew. After listening to the Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor's account, the knot in Xueqi's heart was finally untied and she secretly breathed a sigh of relief. At this moment, the Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor took out a dark gold pendant from the storage pouch at his waist. The pendant was only the size of a fingernail, and its appearance was that of a delicate little lock. It was strung together by a silver bead chain and exuded a mysterious and ancient aura. The Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor held the golden pendant in his hand and handed it to Xueqi. When Imperial Father picked you up that year, this pendant was wrapped around your wrist. It must be some kind of special keepsake and it must be related to your birth. Now that you know about your birth and what happened that year, if you want to find your birth parents, you can use this as a clue to find them. Whether you find your birth parents or not, Imperial Father will always see you as his own daughter and the Royal Azure Dynasty will always be your home." Hearing the heavy and sincere tone of the Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor, Xueqi's heart was filled with warmth and her eyes were faintly covered with a layer of mist. She pursed her lips tightly and nodded. She kept the golden lock-shaped pendant and bowed. "Thank you, Imperial Father." After that, she bowed to the Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor and left the study. On the morning of the third day, Ji Tianqing left the Ji residence and brought Jiang Chen and the guards to the Imperial Palace. When he arrived at the Imperial Palace gates, the Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor who had already received the news hurriedly led the civil and military officials and the Imperial Guards to the Imperial Palace gates to welcome him. After everyone paid their respects, they clustered around Ji Tianqing like stars surrounding the moon and entered the Imperial Palace Grand Hall. Ji Tianqing carried out the authority and duties of the territorial lord. He sat on the emperor's throne and listened to the Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor and the officials of the 6 departments report on the state of the country. After everyone had finished their report, Ji Tianqing pondered for a moment and issued a few orders for the royal Azure Dynasty Emperor to carry out. These orders were related to the national economy and the people's livelihood. They played a decisive role in the fate and future of the royal Azure Dynasty. The royal Azure Dynasty Emperor was a man of great foresight. He understood Ji Tianqing's intentions and immediately thanked him profusely. Ji Tianqing stayed in the imperial palace for half a day. After dealing with the state affairs and official affairs, he then left the imperial palace with Ji Ku. After that, the two of them returned to the Ji residence to wait for Ji Chongkong to deal with the aftermath. The royal Azure Dynasty kingdom was still bustling with noise and excitement. The nobles and aristocrats were still restless and uneasy. The people were still talking endlessly, immersed in the excitement of the territorial lord's arrival. Unknowingly, 6 days had passed in the blink of an eye. Ji Chongkong had finally finished dealing with the Ji family's properties and exchanged them for cultivation resources and wealth. Most of the people in the Ji residence were dismissed by him. Only a few hundred people who were loyal and trustworthy were left behind to follow him to the territorial lord's manor. Among these people, there were not only the Ji family's family members and descendants but also the loyal stewards, guards, and servants of the Ji family. On the morning of the 7th day, Ji Tianqing's ceremonial guards and guards departed. He led Ji Chongkong and a few hundred Ji family members out of the royal Azure Dynasty and rushed to the territorial lord's manor in the ancient stellar realm. Chapter 6:19. Hundreds of huge flying birds carrying nearly 400 people were galloping through the sky. After a day of flying, Ji Tianqing and the others returned to the domain chief's manor at nightfall. When Ji Chongkong and the hundreds of Ji family members saw the domain chief's manor on the top of the mountain, they were stunned. They simply couldn't believe that someone could actually build a palace on such a towering mountain. This was simply inconceivable. The domain chief's manor covered an area of 20 square miles. There were rows upon rows of houses and magnificent palaces. It was like a heavenly palace, the residence of the gods. Ji Chongkong had to admit that the environment of the domain chief's manor was just as Ji Tianqing had described. It was like an abode where the gods lived in seclusion. After they entered the domain chief's manor, the guards and servants were busy for half a night before they finally settled down. Ji Chongkong lived alone in a palace. There were more than a dozen servants and more than 20 guards who were responsible for serving and protecting him. Ji Tianqing asked the housekeeper of the domain chief's manor to take care of the people in charge, the descendants, the servants, and the guards of the Ji family. The empty domain chief's manor soon became lively with more than 100 people living in it. Ji Tianqing stayed in the domain chief's manor for a few days. He took care of everything in the manor and made arrangements for the Ji family members. From now on, the Ji family would settle down in the domain chief's manor. They would thrive and grow stronger. Ji Tianqing spent another 3 days to treat his father's injuries. Ji Tianqing would not be able to treat or cure the hidden injuries in Ji Chongkong's body in the past. But now, not only did he have the strength of the Sky Origin stage, but he also had abundant resources and all kinds of elixirs. He spent 3 days and 3 nights to treat his father's injuries. He also consumed a lot of resources and elixirs. Finally, his father's injuries were completely healed. When all of Ji Chongkong's injuries were removed and all of his injuries were healed, it was as if he had become 10 years younger overnight. He was full of vigor and radiant. From now on, Ji Chongkong would not be troubled by his injuries and his martial arts foundation would recover quickly. The domain chief's manor was rich in spiritual energy and endless cultivation resources. If Ji Chongkong were to stay here for a long time, not only would he be able to cultivate with twice the results with half the effort, his strength would also increase rapidly. Unknowingly, half a month passed. In the past 2 weeks, Ji Tianqing had made all the necessary arrangements for the domain chief's mansion. Jiang Chen and 100 guards stayed behind to guard the domain lord's manor. Jiang Chen led the 5 garrison legions and was responsible for the safety of the Tianqin domain. Of course, when Ji Tianqing wasn't in the domain chief's manor, the sky-bearing sect was the one who made all the decisions in the heavenly stellar region. Jiang Chen had to listen to the sky-bearing sect's orders as well. With that, Ji Tianqing was relieved. On the morning of the 16th day, he left the domain chief's manor with 200 honor guards, ready to return to the central province. Ji Ku and Yan followed him back to Zhongzhou. This morning, Ji Tianqing led the Ji family, Jiang Chen led 100 guards, and Chu Tiantian led the people of the Sky Pillar sect to the domain chief's manor to send Ji Tianqing off. Although Ji Tianqing had only reunited with his family and friends for about 10 days this time, he was still very happy. He came and left in a hurry. Ji Chongkong, Chu Tiantian, and the others were very reluctant to part with him. However, everyone knew that Ji Tianqing was no longer the young man he used to be. He had become a peerless genius, the noble prince, and the domain lord of the Tianqian domain. He still had many important things to deal with. No one asked him to stay for a few more days. They waved goodbye to him in the square outside the domain chief's manor. Ji Tianqing boarded the royal carriage with Ji Ku and Yan Er under the crowd's warm send-off. The honor guards played music, left the square, and flew into the sky. They rushed to the north as fast as lightning. For the next month, Ji Tianqing and the others had been hurrying on with their journey. The journey was long and boring. Ji Tianqing took the opportunity to cultivate and improve his strength silently. Yan Er and Ji Ku did the same. They meditated in the royal carriage to improve their strength silently. The honor guard swaggered through the city with great pomp and grandeur. Ji Tianqing did not encounter any danger along the way. His enemies did not appear again. They did not dare to show up to intercept and assassinate him. On the surface, it seemed that after he became the domain lord, his enemies were afraid of his identity and status and did not dare to deal with him. However, Ji Tianqing knew very well that his enemies were just biding their time. They would never let him go. Especially the Duanmu family, which had been passed down for thousands of years, would not be afraid of him, a little domain lord with no foundation. Ji Tianqing understood this. A strong sense of crisis lingered in his heart. He was eager to improve his strength. Only when he had more strength could he be qualified to compete with those powerful enemies. In the southeast of the central continent, there was a vast forest with a radius of 100,000 miles. It was called the Mangu Forest. In the boundless forest, there were all kinds of exotic flowers and herbs. However, there were also countless poisonous insects, snakes, ants, and fierce monsters. There were also many unknown dangers and poisonous creatures quietly hiding in the depths of the forest. Moreover, the forest was shrouded in hazy clouds all year round. People could not see the situation inside and did not dare to casually step in. If there was no one to guide them, the warriors who rashly entered the mango forest would most likely die without a complete corpse. However, in the depths of the mango forest, there was a hidden greenwood city. This ancient city with a history of thousands of years had the most herbs and elixirs in the central continent. It was known as the legendary City of Life. For thousands of years, if the people of the central continent had an incurable disease or suffered an irrecoverable injury, they would first think of going to the City of Life to seek treatment. This greenwood city was the territory of the Duanmu family, one of the three great families of the human clan. The Duanmu family controlled this city and had half of the herbs and elixirs in the central continent. Therefore, they controlled half of the herbs business in the market. 100 miles north of the greenwood city, there was a towering mountain. There was an ancient and majestic palace at the top of the mountain. It was the residence of the Duanmu family, called the Greenwood Palace. In the palace, in the study of the head of the family, Duanmu Huang, there were three dignified middle-aged men talking seriously. The middle-aged man sitting on the green jade chair was wearing a starry striped robe and a square azure crown. His face was thin but resolute. He had a goatee on his chin. This man's eyes were as deep as the sea of stars. He faintly emitted a mysterious and vast aura. His entire body was surrounded by invisible spiritual energy. Clearly, he was a soul-refining stage cultivator who had surpassed the sky origin stage. This man was the current head of the Duanmu family, Duanmu Huang, the father of Duanmu Yulong. The other two middle-aged men were wearing purple robes. They were tall and strong and had a dignified aura. Chapter 620. The simple and elegant study room was filled with a solemn and murderous atmosphere. The family head, Duanmu Huang's face was as cold as ice. The two elders' faces were also very gloomy and their eyes were filled with hatred. At this moment the second elder said, "Big brother, Yulong was your most beloved son and also the most outstanding son of our Duanmu family's younger generation. Now that Yulong was killed by that lowly brat and not even his bones were left, when can we take revenge?" The third elder on the side also nodded in agreement and said in a low voice with hatred, "Big brother, Our Duanmu family has been standing in the central state for thousands of years. How high is our status? Even the emperor of the imperial court would not dare to kill our Duanmu family's son. Now, everyone in the world is looking at us. If we don't take revenge, where will our Duanmu family's face go? The two elders were filled with hatred and their eyes were filled with murderous intent. Duanmu Huang said expressionlessly, Yulong was my son, how can I not be heartbroken when he was killed? I want to capture Ji Tianqing more than you, cut him into pieces and torture his soul for 100 years. However, a little impatience will spoil great plans. I cannot let our family be suppressed and in danger because of a moment of hatred. That Ji Tianqing has become the Tianqin region lord and is now carrying the imperial court's edict and the region lord's golden seal, leading a guard of honor to the Tianqin region. He is the Tianqin region lord appointed by the imperial court. If we kill him now, everyone in the world will know that it is our Duanmu family who did it. Assassinating a high official, a region lord appointed by the imperial court, is a crime that is close to the death penalty for treason. Hearing Duanmu Huang's words, the two elders frowned and showed an unwilling expression. Big brother, that Ji Tianqing is just an ant-like commoner. Even if he became the emperor's son and the Tianqin region lord, he has no foundation. Even if we kill him, we will be taking revenge for Yulong and it will be justified. The imperial court will not make things difficult for our Duanmu family, right? In these thousands of years, we have made countless contributions to the imperial court. The corners of Duanmu Huang's mouth twitched, revealing a playful sneer. That's right, Ji Tianqing is indeed a lowly commoner like an ant, but who said that he doesn't have a powerful background and foundation? Now that things have come to this, do you still not understand? His biggest backer and background is the imperial court. The two elders were stunned and asked incredulously, how is this possible? That kid is just a commoner. Even if his martial arts talent is outstanding, it's impossible for him to be protected by the imperial court. Duanmu Huang shook his head and said solemnly, whether you believe it or not, this is the result of my repeated investigation and speculation. Although I don't know the exact reason, this is indeed the truth. Otherwise, if he defeated Tianzi in front of everyone and made Tianzi a laughingstock, would he still be safe? If it wasn't for the fact that the imperial court thought highly of him, how could they let a teenager like him become the Tianqin region lord? The two elders' faces changed instantly. They were both angry and anxious. They quickly asked, Big brother, what should we do? With the imperial court protecting him, are we not going to avenge Yulong? Duanmu Huang frowned and a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. He said coldly, how can we not avenge such a deep blood feud? I've said it before, no matter what, we must make Ji Tianqing pay with his blood. I want to cut him into pieces and let him suffer all the pain and torture in the world. This is the only way to vent the hatred in my heart. At this point, Duanmu Huang's tone was filled with hatred. After a pause he continued, however, now is not the time for revenge. When Ji Tianqing leaves the Tianqin region and returns to the central region, you can find a chance to kill him. You must plan this matter thoroughly. You must kill him in one strike, and you must not leak the slightest bit of information. Although I only need one move to kill him, the imperial court will definitely kill him. But that old fox, the emperor, will definitely keep an eye on me, so I can only leave this matter to you guys. The two elders hurriedly nodded and said solemnly, Big brother, don't worry. We will definitely do this flawlessly. Big brother, don't worry. Leave it to us. Duanmu Huang nodded and did not say anything else. A month passed quickly. Early in the morning, Ji Tianqing and the others returned to the central region city. The majestic honor guard landed outside the city gate. With a noble and dignified aura, they passed through the city gate and entered the city. Ji Tianqing, Ji Ku and Yan had already finished cultivating. They were sitting in the royal carriage and looking at the scene in the city. It had been more than 3 months since Ji Tianqing left the central region city and returned today. The scene in the city had not changed much. It was as bustling and lively as ever. When the honor guard passed through the straight and wide street, the commoners and martial artists along the way all stepped aside and retreated to the side of the street to look and discuss. The news of Ji Tianqing obtaining the position of Tianqin region lord had long spread throughout the central region. The commoners of the central region city had also been discussing it enthusiastically for more than a month. When countless commoners saw the honor guard, they quickly recognized that it was his honor guard. Immediately, the commoners and martial artists on both sides of the street began to whisper to each other. Quickly look. There's another emperor returning from his patrol. What a big lineup. I know, this is Emperor Ji Tianqing's honor guard. He just became the Tianqin region lord and he returned to the central region city so quickly. Haha, I've finally seen the legendary peerless genius Ji Tianqing with my own eyes. He is the #1 genius of our human race, the most monstrous emperor's son. Ever since he defeated the Son of Heaven 4 months ago, there has been news of him for the past few months. He has already created several miracles in a row. It's said that Emperor Tianqing is only 18 years old and he has already become an overlord. This is simply unprecedented. The commoners on both sides of the street were from the human race, the demon race, and the water race. The commoners of the demon race and the water race were mostly exclaiming and discussing. The common people of the human clan all looked very proud and excited. There were even many young martial artists who admired Ji Tianqing who cheered and shouted. They bowed and paid their respects to the royal carriage. In the central region, the commoners of the human race had long recognized him as the #1 genius of the human race. They regarded him as the most monstrous peerless genius and felt proud of him. Many people were still looking forward to when Ji Tianqing would grow and become the peerless genius of the water race and the demon race. At that time, it would be his most glorious moment. He would definitely win glory for the human race and look down on the Tianxian continent. Among the crowd on the street, there was a human man wearing a black robe and a cloak that covered his face. This person was not as excited as the others, but he stared coldly at the honor guard. His eyes were surging with hatred and killing intent. Chapter 621. After a long time, Ji Tianqing's guard of honor passed through half of the city and entered the entrance of the monarch mansion in the forest of divine monuments. Only then did the people of various races on both sides of the street disperse in groups of 3 or 5. The inconspicuous black-robed man in the crowd also quietly left the street and quickly ran out of the central state city. After leaving the north gate, the black-robed man entered the rolling mountain range and ran as fast as lightning for 400 miles. After 2 hours, he was far away from the central state city and entered the depths of the towering mountain range. He entered a cave hidden in the mountain peak. The cave seemed to be formed naturally, but it was actually winding inside with man-made passages and corridors. The black-robed man walked through the winding passages and entered the depths of the cave after a quarter of an hour. Inside the dimly lit cave, there was a faint chill and the smell of blood. The cave was not big, only a dozen meters in radius. The ground and the cave walls were made of rough rock. There were only 2 praying mats made of millstone, a few stone stools, and a stone table in the cave. On a praying mat made of black cold iron sat a bald man in a scarlet robe, who was unusually tall and burly. This person was 3 meters tall and was as sturdy as an iron tower. His exposed neck and arms were covered with thick purple hair. Clearly, this bald-headed man with a ferocious aura was a devil race powerhouse. The black-robed man came into the cave and respectfully bowed to the bald man. He reported in a deep voice, "Demon King Lifeng, this subordinate has found the news. That worm Ji Tianqing has returned to the central state city today." The Demon King Liefeng's bell-sized eyes stared at the black-robed man, revealing a look of joy. "Wu Chuan, is this news true?" The black-robed man called Wu Chuan cupped his hands again and said, "This news is absolutely true. Just now, this subordinate saw Ji Tianqing's god of honor go to the monarch mansion with my own eyes." The Demon King Lifeng suddenly grinned and laughed, his eyes bursting with a bright light. "Great! That little bastard is finally back. We didn't take the risk to come to the central state city and wait here for a month in vain. Wu Chuan, you need to continue hiding in the city and keep an eye on the city. Once Ji Tianqing leaves the monarch palace, you must immediately report to this prince. Humph! As long as I capture that brat, our fierce wind tribe will become a great contributor. In the future, we will definitely be appreciated and rewarded by His Majesty the Nephilim King." At this point, Demon King Liefeng's eyes were filled with anticipation. Wu Chuan was silent for a while before he asked in confusion, "Lord Devil King, I still don't understand why His Majesty the Devil King ordered all the tribes to capture Ji Tianqing no matter what. That human boy is indeed capable, but I don't think he's worth the great Devil Emperor's attention, do I?" Speaking of this issue, the Demon King of Liefeng's expression became solemn. He stared at Wu Chuan with burning eyes,
pondered for a while, then said, "Wu Chuan, this is a secret that His Majesty the Devil Emperor has ordered us to discuss.
However, since you are my adopted son, I believe you and will tell you the truth."
When His Majesty the Devil Emperor fled back to the northern desert, his vitality was greatly damaged and his strength was very weak.
He will need to recuperate for many years to recover. However, Ji Tianqing has the Kenshin bloodline, which is the blood of the Supreme God. It has incredible effects. If His Majesty the Devil Emperor can obtain the Kenshin blood, he will be able to tap into the infinite power of the God's blood and quickly recover his vitality and strength. In this way, our demon race will have a day to rise up and return to our heyday. Hearing the Demon King of Liefeng's explanation, Wu Chuan was surprised and shouted in disbelief. That lowly human boy actually has the Kenshin bloodline? How is that possible?
After being stunned for a while, he came back to his senses and suddenly understood, nodding repeatedly.
No wonder that boy is called the #1 genius of the human race. At the age of 18, he has become an overlord. I see. No wonder when His Majesty the Devil Emperor gave the order, all the demon kings of the other tribes came out and swore to capture Ji Tianqing and present him to His Majesty the Devil Emperor. The Demon King of Liefeng nodded and said solemnly, "Wu Chuan, it is good that you understand the importance of this. Our Liefeng tribe is the weakest among the hundreds of tribes in the northern desert. We don't have abundant resources, so we will never rise up. If I can capture Ji Tianqing and present him to His Majesty the Devil Emperor, it will be a great contribution. By that time, our Liefeng tribe will be supported by His Majesty the Devil Emperor and become a top tribe."
However, there are over a dozen other leaders who have come to the Central Plains with the same purpose as me.
We have to seize the time and act before those leaders. We can't let others take the credit. Wu Chuan hurriedly nodded and said seriously, "I understand. However, Ji Tianqing can fight a Sky Origin stage cultivator to a draw. My Demon King, you have to be careful."
The Demon King of Liefeng waved his hand and sneered. "Since I have the courage to come to the Central Plains, I have the confidence to defeat him. Even if I can't capture him alive, I will kill him at all costs and bring his body back to His Majesty the Devil Emperor."
Wu Chuan cupped his hands and bowed. "I wish you a great victory, my Demon King. I hope you can capture Ji Tianqing and win His Majesty the Devil Emperor's appreciation. I will go back to the Central Plains and keep an eye on the situation. I will report to you if there is any movement." After that, Wu Chuan turned around and left the cave, heading to the Central Plains. At the same time, Ji Tianqing's honor guards returned to the king's palace and entered the Tianqing palace. Since he left with Ji Ku and the others, there were only a dozen guards and maids left in the huge Tianqing palace. It was very quiet. Fortunately, no one came to visit during this time. The Tianqing palace was very peaceful. After the honor guards returned to the Tianqing palace, Ji Tianqing asked them to leave and rest. Originally, the 200 honor guards belonged to the imperial court. They should have left the king's palace and returned to the imperial court.
However, the king gave the 200 honor guards to him.
From now on, they would be his servants and guards. They would stay in the Tianqing palace and serve as his honor guards when he went out. Ji Tianqing took a stroll around the palace, inspecting every defensive formation inside and out. After making sure that the formations were all right, he returned to his room. The Tianqing palace was not as luxurious as the king's palace. However, it contained more spiritual qi of heaven and earth, which was more suitable for secluded cultivation.
Ji Tianqing arranged the things in the palace and was about to enter the secret chamber to cultivate in seclusion. However, at this moment, a guard came to report that the emperor, Long Yunshao, had come to visit.
Ji Tianqing asked and found out that Long Yunshao came alone to pass him a message. Chapter 622. Ji Tianqing ordered the guards to bring Long Yunshao to the guest hall. He rushed to the guest hall and waited for a while before seeing Long Yunshao walking over. After not seeing him for 2 months, Long Yunshao was wearing a white robe and a jade crown. He had regained his handsome and heroic demeanor. Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and greeted him. After Long Yunshao sat down, he asked, "Son of Heaven, why are you here today?" Long Yunshao did not waste any time and went straight to the point. "I heard that your guard of honor entered the monarch residence and knew that you were back, so I hurried over. The monarch residence has been secretly investigating for more than a month and finally found traces of the ancient demon emperor half a month ago. You just returned to the monarch residence, so you might not know about this. The ancient demon emperor has fled back to the demon race's nest in the northern desert. Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows when he heard the news.
His eyes were a little dark and he said in a low voice, "That damned demon!"
He disappeared for a few months and secretly fled back to the northern desert. Now that he's back to his nest, it will be difficult to get rid of him in the future. Long Yunxiao nodded and said seriously, "That's right. The northern desert is a forbidden area that no one is willing to step foot in." After the ancient demon emperor fled back to his nest, he could recuperate and slowly recover his strength. If he hasn't returned to the northern desert, the monarch residence can still send experts to get rid of him. But in the current situation, this matter can only be dropped. The monarch residence has already cancelled the plan to get rid of the ancient demon emperor. After all, the monarch residence is only a neutral sacred ground and will not interfere with the grudges between the races. If we want to get rid of the ancient demon emperor completely, we can only rely on the experts of the human and demon races. The aqua race will definitely not help. Ji Tianxing pondered for a while and said calmly, "If that's the case, we can only put this matter aside first. Fortunately, the ancient demon emperor's injuries are very serious, and he will need at least 10 years to recover." Long Yunxiao shook his head and said seriously, "No, the ancient demon emperor will not wait that long. He doesn't have the patience. You have the power that he wants the most, so this monarch speculates that he will definitely think of ways to deal with you." In the past few days, the imperial court spies had discovered some movements. Some disguised demons had infiltrated Central State City. If I didn't guess wrongly, their target is very likely you. Although Long Yunxiao didn't say that the ancient demon emperor's target was the Kenshin bloodline, Long Yunxiao didn't say it explicitly. However, both of them were well aware of just how attractive the Kenshin bloodline was to the demon emperor. Ji Tianxing was only a bit surprised and doubtful. The demons actually dare to infiltrate Central State City? Are they that audacious? Long Yunxiao nodded and said with a solemn expression, "Central Continent City is a neutral zone. Cultivators of all races can enter. This main city was ruled by the emperor's residence. As long as there was no massacre in the city, the emperor's residence would not interfere. Demons have always been cruel and bloodthirsty. They will do anything to achieve their goals. You have to be careful. You'd better stay in the monarch manor and not go out easily." Ji Tianxing nodded. Long Yunxiao continued, "There's another matter. You killed Duanmu Yulong on the stage. Although it was a reasonable action, it also angered the Duanmu clan. The Duanmu clan's experts will definitely not let you go. They will definitely think of a way to kill you and avenge Duanmu Yulong. When you were the new Heavenly Stellar Region Lord, the Duanmu clan did not dare to act rashly with the Imperial Court's prestige protecting you. However, now that you've returned to Central State, the Duanmu clan will not be content. You have to be more vigilant." Ji Tianxing nodded again and cupped his hands. "Thank you for your reminder. Other than these two matters, is there anything else?" Long Yunxiao withdrew his serious expression and revealed a trace of a smile on his handsome face. "Of course there is. The third matter is, congratulations on becoming the Heavenly Stellar Region Lord." Ji Tianxing smiled and thanked him. After discussing official matters, Long Yunxiao didn't stay any longer. He said goodbye and turned to leave. Ji Tianxing asked the guard to send him out of the palace and was about to return to his residence. However, the guard soon returned and reported again, "My lord, there are a few more imperial princes outside the door. They say they are here to congratulate you." "Another wave of gifts?" Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and waved his hand. "Bring them in." The guard cupped his hands and obeyed. He quickly left the guest hall and rushed to the main door. Not long after, he led a few human clan imperial princes to the guest hall. Ji Tianxing had been waiting in the hall for a long time. When he saw them arrive, he greeted them and chatted with them. These human princes had entered the monarch mansion earlier than the others, so their rankings were higher than the others. They had nothing to do with the Duanmu clan and the Murong family. They didn't have any enmity or grudges with Ji Tianxing, so they were willing to take the initiative to befriend him. When they found out that Ji Tianxing's honor guard had returned to the imperial mansion, they hurried to the Tianxing palace to congratulate him with the gifts they had prepared earlier. After they were seated, they chatted as they sipped their spiritual tea. Imperial Prince Tianxing, Congratulations on becoming the Tianqing Territory Lord. This is a token of my appreciation. Please accept it. Imperial Prince Tianqing, no. I should call you Tianqing Territory Lord from now on. You have become an overlord at such a young age. How enviable. Right now, in the Central Continent, the name of the Celestial Emperor can be said to be known to everyone. Your title as the #1 genius of the human clan is also well-deserved. Perhaps in another 3 to 5 years, Imperial Prince Tianqing will become the most powerful Imperial Prince in our clan and compete with the most powerful geniuses of the Water Tribe and the Demon Clan. The Imperial Princes were chatting and laughing. They were full of praise for Ji Tianqing. They were full of respect and envy. They were also Imperial Princes and had entered the Imperial Mansion earlier than Ji Tianqing. Their strength was also higher. However, they were not well known. Their status was not as high as Ji Tianqing's. Their martial arts talent could not be compared to Ji Tianqing's. Therefore, the Imperial Princes came to congratulate Ji Tianqing with gifts with the intention of currying favor with him. If these Imperial Princes had some powerful family or force behind them, Ji Tianqing would definitely not befriend them. However, they were all unaffiliated people. Ji Tianqing wouldn't be so unreasonable as to reject them when they took the initiative to befriend them. He accepted the gifts from the Imperial Princes and thanked them. Then, he chatted with them for a while. The Imperial Princes were still worried before they came. They were afraid that Ji Tianqing would be too arrogant and refuse to befriend them. Now that they had given their gifts, they were relieved and did not stay any longer. They bid farewell and left. After sending off the Imperial Princes, Ji Tianqing could finally cultivate in seclusion. He entered the secret chamber with abundant spiritual qi and activated several arrays in the room to gather the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Before cultivating in seclusion, he took out the star divine gold from his interspatial ring and set up a heavenly spiritual array in the secret chamber. Obviously, he was going to use the terrifying pressure of the heavenly spiritual array to quickly increase his strength and cultivate the ultimate sword body. Chapter 623. Inside the Monarch Mansion, Yun Yao's cave, Yun Yao's palace. In the cold and elegant study room, Yun Yao was sitting in front of a table, holding an ancient book and reading it. At this moment, there was a knock on the door of the study room, followed by a clear and melodious female voice. "Big Sister Yun." Yun Yao put down the ancient book in her hand, looked up at the door and said, "Come in." The door opened and a beautiful woman in a green dress walked into the study room and stood in front of the table. This pure and beautiful woman was Lan Huixin. She bowed to Yun Yao and asked with a smile on her face, "Sister Yun, what instructions do you have for me to come here?" Yun Yao nodded and motioned for her to sit down and talk. She said calmly, "Huixin, the storm of the consort selection has passed and you have stayed in the central province for 3 months. There are many rules in the Monarch Mansion, so it's not suitable for you to continue staying by my side. Firstly, it's inconvenient for you to move around, and secondly, it will delay your cultivation." Hearing Yun Yao's words, the smile on Lan Huixin's face suddenly froze, and then it turned into a deep sense of loss and sadness. Her clear eyes were covered with a layer of mist, and she said with a voice full of grievance, "Big Sister Yun, are you driving me away?" Yun Yao slightly frowned and shook her head gently. "Huixin, you are the proud daughter of heaven in the Long Sky region. You have your own life and future, so why are you so insistent on staying by my side? Don't worry, I will send Yun Luo to personally escort you back to the Long Sky region." The storm of the consort selection had not passed yet, so it was indeed dangerous for Lan Huixin to return to the Long Sky region alone. Now that 3 months had passed, the storm of that matter had subsided, and the people had gradually forgotten about Lan Huixin. Moreover, with Yun Luo, a heaven origin expert, escorting Lan Huixin, she would definitely be able to return to the Long Sky region safely. Yun Yao had taken Lan Huixin in for 3 months and sent Yun Luo to escort her back, which was already extremely benevolent. However, Lan Huixin finally managed to stay by Yun Yao's side and followed her into the emperor's mansion. How could she be willing to leave just like that? She put on a pitiful look, and tears welled up in her eyes. She immediately knelt in front of Yun Yao, sobbing and begging. "Big Sister Yun, Huixin is now a homeless person. If she leaves your side, I really don't know where to go. Big Sister Yun, please don't chase me away. I just want to find a place to settle down and live a peaceful life."
As long as I can stay by your side, I am willing to be your servant and serve you. Lan Huixin cried like a pear blossom in the rain. As she spoke, she kowtowed and saluted. Her expression was extremely mournful. Yun Yao couldn't bear to see her like this. She sighed and said, "Sigh, you're a genius. Why do you have to do this?" However, Lan Huixin shook her head repeatedly and said, "Big Sister Yun, with Hui Xian's aptitude and status, I can be considered noble in the secular world. However, in the land of Central Province, what does it count for? Hui Xian comes from a humble background and has mediocre aptitude. It's Hui Xian's honor to be your servant. I only hope that Big Sister Yun won't chase me away." Lan Huixin knelt down and kowtowed again, begging bitterly with tears flowing down her face. She had already done this much. Yun Yao wasn't a cold-hearted person. How could she still refuse her? Sigh. She sighed deeply and helplessly. She reached out to help Lan Huixin up and said, "Since you're determined not to leave, then stay. Later, I'll ask Yun Luo to arrange a position for you. You'll stay in Yun Yao's palace as an attendant. However, this is the emperor's mansion. You don't have to follow me at all times. Stay in Yun Yao's palace and don't wander around casually." Yun Yao warned her in a solemn tone. Only then did Lan Huixin stop crying and smile. She quickly wiped the tears off her pretty face and nodded repeatedly in agreement. "Big Sister Yun, please don't worry. Hui Xian knows the rules. I won't cause you any trouble." Yun Yao nodded and said, "Okay, I still have something to do and have to go out. Go find Yun Luo. I'll ask her to make the arrangements." After sending Lan Huixin away, Yun Yao left the cave and rode the spirit crane to the mountains in the southwest. An hour later, the spirit crane landed outside the gate of Tianqing Palace. Yun Yao put away the spirit crane and walked toward the gate. When the guard saw her, he quickly bowed and opened the gate in the defensive array, leading her into the palace. A moment later, she entered Ji Tianqing's study and sat down to wait while the guard went to report the news. Yun Yao waited quietly for a moment. Ji Tianqing rushed over after hearing the news and walked into the study. "Yao Yao, I just came back. How did you get the news so quickly?" Yun Yao looked at him with a gentle gaze and nodded slightly. "I came to find you a few days ago. At that time, you hadn't come back yet, so I sent people to keep an eye on you. When you returned to the Monarch Palace, there was such a big commotion and lineup. Of course, I got the news immediately." Ji Tianqing smiled and sat down beside her. "I was just about to go into seclusion to cultivate when you came to find me. Is there something important?" Yun Yao frowned and thought for a moment. She said with a complicated tone, "It's important, but it's also not very important." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked with interest, "What is it?" Yun Yao said with a calm expression, "Previously, the little spirit bird brought me a message from Cloud Soul Palace. Half a month ago, my father came out of seclusion. He already knows about the two of us and everything that has happened in the past few months. My father wants to see you, so he wants to invite you to Cloud Soul Palace for a banquet. This is my father's wish. You can think about it on your own. You don't have to go." Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment. The corner of his mouth hooked up in a smile. He said with a playful tone, "Oh, my future father-in-law wants to see me. How can I not go?" Yun Yao looked at him and hesitated for a moment before asking, "Tianqing, are you serious?" "Of course." Ji Tianqing nodded without hesitation. He said seriously, "Just like how I am serious about you." Yun Yao's expression didn't change, but a trace of shyness flashed through her eyes. She turned her head slightly, not daring to look directly into Ji Tianqing's deep eyes. She nodded and said, "If that's the case, then after you've made your preparations we'll leave." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "All right. Wait a moment. I'll go make some preparations." He then left the study to make the necessary preparations. An hour later, he changed into a more formal set of robes and prepared a gift. The two of them left the imperial residence together. They rode on Qianyu and rushed to Cloud Soul Palace as fast as lightning. Zhongzhou City was located in the center of the Zhongzhou continent. Cloud Soul Palace was located in the south of the Zhongzhou continent. The distance between the two places was very far. Even if Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao rushed at full speed,
They would still need to fly for 3 days. During the journey, Yun Yao was a little nervous. She explained her father's situation and personality to Ji Tianqing in advance. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.